Yeah, I mean, because my goodness, that's what I told him. I said, go to the middle field sale and buy a goat, take it out there and tie it up,
and then put a 2,000-pound round bale by it.
Yeah, you got the sacrificial goat.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there that helps the metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 225, as Nick keeps us in line.
What was it? Was that you? That little shimmying noise?
Oh, yeah. It was just
I heard a
little air in my teeth.
When you're raised by flies?
Yeah. And yeah, if you're listening to this, it is December the 10th. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of in real time here. We've caught back up at this point.
Yeah.
It's because the hunting season's like...
We haven't been this real time in a long time.
We're real.
Well said, Nick. I've been this real time in a long time.
In a long time. You want to do your part?
Yeah. Hey, thank you guys for being here. We appreciate you guys listening, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. It's been real. Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern time. You can give us a like, follow, or subscribe. One of those will give you a notification as to when we drop those. If you've written us on Instagram, DM, or the website, those are the 2 that we check most frequently. Mm-hmm. And I would say we're
in good shape,
progressively getting caught up.
Yeah.
So that's good news.
That's good news for you.
And if you are looking for a holiday gift for yourself or for a loved one, we have some merch on the website. And so that's coming. You got Christmas.
Got
Christmas coming up.
A
lot of you guys have been buying stuff, so we appreciate that.
Nick appreciates it.
As does Nick. Yep. And so everybody's out there looking sharp. And
here we go. Like I said, it's December 10th. A lot of gun seasons over, some last week's or wrapping up here. And we're kind of in that stretch of, I assume we call it the late season at this point.
Yeah, we're there. Well, it's just a wishing, just the gun seasons suck. It's just what it is. I'm just ready for those to be done. And then we can, I try to just look the other way. Like I don't really hunt during the gun seasons I hunted during the Illinois one, but right now it's just kind of like, okay, just let it be what it is. We've done everything to try to get them through. It's kind of out of your control. So Once those pass, I'll tune back in and, hopefully see what's left and try to decide if we're going to hunt something late season or not.
It's kind of interesting because I don't think, it's been a couple, but I haven't killed many deer in the late season. Whether it's, a lot of my properties don't set up for it, so they're kind of just not there. Some of it is just like, the deer kind of have made it this far. It's like, do I really want to kill them at this point, or do I want them to make it through? Mm-hmm. And that really is season dependent, right? If you haven't killed a deer at that point, it's like, yeah, you would still want to kill one.
Yeah.
But like we've killed deer, we've killed bucks, like we've, so it's at the point where it's like,
it's hard, the late season is hard hunting. Like in a way.
You think so? I was thinking if you have food, it's easier. It's back to afternoons and food to bed.
Well, they're there. So in a sense, like it's, it's fairly textbook, but in terms of actually killing one, I do think it's challenging.
Yeah.
Like the field hunting is hard. There's just a lot of eyeballs. It's like condition wise, it's cold. So that's that's a challenge.
The eyeballs is a big thing, especially when you started talking about late season bow hunting.
Yeah, and access is more challenging than it has been the whole year, just because they can see further, all the foliage is off the trees. It's just, and them deer aren't dumb either, so it's like if you're drawing them into like a condensed location or whatever, they just they know to get downwind of that. So.
Yeah,
but it obviously can be done. I mean, we're getting ready to we'll do some doe hunts and stuff here coming up, and we'll see. I've got that GR8 buck running around that I'm like, I don't know
about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times throughout the season I definitely would have killed him. I mean, he's a 5-year-old buck, and but like you're saying, I'm like, boy, he's like the only 5-year-old that I know of right now, and I'm like, if that's the case, do I want to go kill him, or do I, considering what I've killed, or the success I've had so far this season, I'm like, do I just let him go?
Right.
Just let him be.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at in Kentucky. I think the 5-year-old I have there, at least on my newer farm, is he's safe for me at least.
Yep.
I'll just let him be, and I'm gonna look around. I definitely still think I'm gonna take recurve out in a late season and try to pop something with that, whether it's a doe or if I go in public here in Pennsylvania and try to pop one, or I might take the flintlock after Christmas. That's always fun. We were talking about getting some traps set out on some coyotes and stuff.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, so it's a cool time of year to be able to just start to look at other things. Definitely want to shoot some does off my Ohio farm. So yeah, it's kind of that time of year where you're just like, all right, here we are. Here's what's left. Now what do we do?
Mm-hmm. I do with my hands. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think if you've got food, like if you've got standing grain or you've got really good brassica plots, like you're probably, and there's good bucks around, like you've got a good chance of killing them.
Or at least of them being there.
Playing these fronts, I think you've got a good chance of killing them.
Yep.
But if you don't have food, like if you're in the big woods and you've been hunting, acorns and scrape lines and stuff,
it's over.
She gets hard, man. It is not fun. I mean, really what I've kind of been doing in like Kentucky in the big woods, like I'm walking giant ridges, finding sign and just laying cameras down just to see if I could find some of these bucks that I haven't seen for, the whole year, to see what's out there. So I'm kind of using it as like starting to scout, I guess, even though it's still season, but sign's fresh, so that that's always a good thing to be able to lay some cameras where you're finding some fresh sign. So yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm looking at it from a big wood standpoint, but there's still plenty of season left. I mean, they're out there, they've got to survive, they've got to eat. So I mean, if you can find them, you can kill them still.
Yeah, I feel like so many places that guys hunt are like it's like a constant. Like you have a certain number of bucks going into the season, and then obviously deer get killed throughout the season, and so it's like I feel like a lot of them, or at least the places that I hunt, are like there's just such a threshold of like there are deer that I would shoot going into a certain point. If we're lucky, that's what you hope for anyway.
Yep.
And then at a certain point, whether we've killed some or they have gotten killed or just died by natural causes, it's like you hit a point where you're like, okay, that's enough, or it's driven by pressure too, because it's
sure.
like it's like if I felt like GR8 was or any of those deer, frankly, were like really at high risk, I'd probably be more inclined to still be hunting them hard. But the fact that I have some sense of security that I'm like, they might make it, has me just okay with it for now. Okay, we'll just see
I think that's a big piece of it. Like I've talked to a couple guys that are hunting really good deer on public here in Pennsylvania and in Wisconsin and Michigan as well. And like I would be all over those damn deer right now.
Yeah, you got to stay on them.
Yeah, if you're on them right now, you just stay on them type of thing. And it's fun. I like the late season from a scouting standpoint, from an ability to kind of start to find some of these plays. I at least see. I think a lot of the deer are utilizing spots in the late season that they're going to utilize in the early season next year. I think they overlap a lot just based on bedding and food source and security cover and that kind of thing. So, if you've got immense pressure, that might change things. But if you're in some of these bigger areas, like if you can find these really good bedding areas with good browse, or next to standing grain, if you're in farm country, like those tend to be really good areas come next year as well. So I'm just trying to use those different, times to scout through and find sign and see what deer are in there. maybe even at this point starting to get aggressive and go into some of the areas that I don't usually go into if gun seasons are over, because I'm not worried about pushing them around and like somebody killing them with a bow necessarily.
Right. Yeah. Same. So
yeah, it's kind of a weird time. We have a guest today who just put a tag on a buck in Illinois. We've got Ben Rising back on. So I think it was 2 days ago Ben killed one in Illinois. I want to say.
I don't know. You told me a day or two ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2 days ago. So, and I think he's in Missouri now. So I think he's migrated from Illinois to Missouri. He's got a tag down there still. And so, yeah, I figured we'd get Ben on. It's always a good time to talk about kind of what he was looking at when he was getting in and getting on to this deer that he killed, and even kind of his thoughts here moving into the late season. You know, I think Ben's a guy who we all watch and see how hard he hunts, and he's got runs typically where he'll kill 3 or 4 deer in a 2-week period, you know, and this year we even talked about, I think in the Hunt Companion, it's been stranger this year, like stranger things this year. It's just been, it's been a little different. I don't know how to put my finger on it yet, but like some of the deer that are showing up or aren't showing up, some of the movements, some of the disappearances, are they dead? Have they just moved off? Like a lot of things this year that I couldn't tell you the last time that I've had some of these deer that, you know, consistently have shown up year after year after year, just don't. Without EHD or something like that being a potential reasoning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, figure we'll get Ben on and pick his brain here on the late season and talk about his hunt here in Illinois and kind of go from there.
Yeah, let's do it.
What's up, brother? How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
Doing great, man. Well, so was I accurate in that? You're in Missouri now?
Yes, correct.
And you killed one already in Missouri, right?
Yeah, I killed one November 5th.
Yep.
But the way Missouri works, you can kill 2 bucks, but you either have to kill them both after rifle season or one before rifle season. Then the second one you can shoot after.
Got it.
And rifle season's like 2 weeks. So
yep.
I couldn't stay and hunt. I killed that deer, moved to Kansas. Then I killed one there and then went back to Illinois for a little bit. Had an encounter with a really good deer and just couldn't make it happen. I mean, I had him at 35. He was getting ready to come broadside. Then some does stepped out across the field, and he turned quartering away I knew he was going to go chase him. He kind of wagged his tail, and he decided he was going to stick his head down in the beans one more time, take a bite of beans. And I saw my opportunity, and I was like, well, I'm going to shoot. It was 37 yards. And, man, I let her go, and daggone it, dude. It was like perfect, I thought. And but the arrow just kind of like hit the deer and just kind of skimmed down its side and deflected.
Wow.
Didn't go in. So that was a heartbreaker. And he was mid 60s to 70.
Dang.
That's weird.
So just just maybe harder quarter away than you thought?
I'm guessing. I don't know. Cause like, you know, I don't know if I hit like a rib and it was just enough to, I don't know, but looking at the video, it doesn't, I don't know. And then I got a picture of him like 5 days later, and there's just a small gash, you know, like it should have, I don't know what happened. I guess maybe he just was quartering a little harder than I thought or something. I don't know. But honestly, I just felt like it just wasn't meant to be. Like, I mean, it's just I've had that kind of year, so it's just like honestly, it happened, and I was like, "Well, would you look at that?
Well, yeah,
look at that." And I just packed my crap and walked out and come home.
Yeah, it's seems to be how it goes, man. We were kind of talking about it in our little Hunt Companion thing we were doing. I don't know, man. It just seems like it's been a strange season. Like,
it's like
I don't know.
I've never experienced a year like this, I don't think yet. Even though I've harvested 3 now, so many oddball things mixed with EHD, different, you know. Then I thought a deer or 2 had died of EHD. Then I get a picture of one here just a week and a half ago, a mile away, that I hadn't had a picture of since October 5th. Thought the deer was dead for sure, and he shows up a mile and a half away on another farm that I had permission to hunt.
Jeez.
And I'm like, what in the world? And he's not a shooter yet. He's a really stud 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody else most people would shoot the deer, but I was like, man, that's a deer that could really be something if he lives. But I know I lost like my biggest deer that I really wanted to shoot. He's gone. Like he died of EHD. They found like 6-7 deer in one cornfield next to me there. And then the other neighbor found a bunch. And so I hadn't even walked my creek yet or my cornfield. So I don't know what's in there.
Is that in Illinois you were finding these EHD deer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find any in Ohio this year, Ben?
No.
Yeah. We had a couple, like young deer, like, and not many of them, but just more than I expected, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to verify it, but I don't know what else to attribute it to. It's like we just found a handful of young bucks and stuff like in these ditches, and I just thought it was because we haven't really ever had it at our place before.
Yeah. I found them in Missouri, Illinois. Didn't find any in Ohio. Don't think I experienced it in Kentucky, but don't think.
Mm-hmm.
But but just overall, it's just been really weird. Like deer not doing the same thing they've done for years, deer leaving that typically don't leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, I'll tell you what I think some of it is. I think some of it is people are getting more involved in their own habitat, and you're starting to alter the landscape. Like,
Yeah, that's a good reasoning.
So I think I know it's a fact for around me because, and I'm not blowing my own horn. I'm not trying to sound gloatful, but when people find out that somebody, like me or you or Mark Dury or any hunter that's consistently tagging good deer, if they know you hunt somewhere on a piece of property, whether you own it or lease it or whatever, it just draws attention.
Sure.
And
yeah,
your neighbors are going to do more and more that they can to, and that's what's happening around me. I notice.
Yeah. So basically you're looking at at one point in time, it's like I had the best and banging place in the area. So that's where the bucks were hanging out. Now other people are making efforts. So it's kind of dispersing more evenly across the landscape.
Yeah, I just think I mean, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's great.
Sure.
That guys are jumping on board, and in the long term, it's going to probably help everybody.
Agree.
The more management, the more food, the more diverse habitat these deer have. I think it's better in the long run because everybody's going to get a chance.
Yep.
But I just think that's possibly why some of the deer that I typically end up picking up, later in the year, like into October, that come and start rutting and they hang out the rest of the year. I think that's why some of them are not staying this year.
Mm-hmm.
And some haven't even showed up. So just kind of strange. And that's all over the place. Now, Ohio's a different breed. I mean, that's just whoever has the biggest corn pile wins, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that I don't even consider Ohio to be, I don't even talk about it anymore because it's just so disgusting to me.
Yeah.
Ben, guess who reached out to me the other day, or to us about wanting to come on the podcast? I think the guy's name is John Hudstead or something.
Yeah.
He's the
lieutenant governor.
The lieutenant governor of Ohio wants to come on and chat.
Nice.
So I don't know.
Hopefully it's about good things, but I mean,
he probably wants to reprimand us for.
And again, I'm not like trying to knock people that bait because we all have to put bait out in Ohio if you want to keep deer on your property. But my personal opinion is I wish that they would change it to where you could supplemental feed, use mineral, in the off season and stuff. But during hunting season, man, and everybody says, oh, what's the difference between that and a food plot? Well, there's a big difference in my opinion.
Yeah. We just got done arguing with people about that.
I mean, a 1 acre to 2 acre food plot is a little different than a 2 foot wide corn pile that's directed right in front. You can literally drive down the road in my area in Holmes County, Ohio, in Coshocton County, where I hunt. You can literally see corn piles from the road, box blinds overlooking the corn pile at 20 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Like numerous. I could drive you to numerous ones like that.
Yeah. And I mean, that is, Yeah, it's such I get it on all sides. Like I've listened to enough people who are like, well, like listen, if I don't have this, I'm I'm not going to kill a deer.
Yeah, no, I get it.
know?
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's wrong because these guys have to do that. I'm just saying that's what our sport has come to.
It has. Yeah.
Like it just literally is not. It just doesn't feel good anymore. Like,
well, dude, I sent Jared a picture. Was it like a week ago? When was it? Thanksgiving? There's a 1 acre parcel against my 75 acres in Kentucky with 2 ladder stands and a feeder in the front yard with their cabin against my 75. And it's like, what do you think's going to happen there? Like, even if a deer does come to that feeder and you kill it or shoot it, it's going to run on my property. Like I surround
I know where there's one very similar in my area. It's a 2 acre parcel. They have a small hunting cabin. And they feed, and there's a light pole, and the corn pile's right under the light pole.
Mm-hmm.
And that light is never on.
Yeah.
Until dark. Then that light comes. What do you think's happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, whatever. I mean, I'm just saying, like, and now, with the thermals and all this, the deer are they really have it against them anymore.
I don't think that they have any advantages.
I mean, thermal scopes on crossbows and, everything gets abused. I mean, now you got guys finding deer with drones to go in and hunt them. And, they find where they're bedding. They go in and hang a stand. And, and I have these arguments with people where they're like, well, the cell cams absolutely cell cams, trail cameras in general have changed our sport with that technology. But a cell cam, even at this point, can't tell you exactly where that deer is the second after you got its picture.
No.
And it's not like we all go running to the stand just because he walked by your camera. I mean, it tells you what's going on, especially like out of state. It tells you if the deer are moving more, things like that.
I mean, in fairness, Ben, guys are for sure, right? Like that happens. Like,
I'm sure there are some, especially guys with corn piles that are running corn piles. I don't doubt that. And I'm just, but I use them to monitor a lot of scrapes, and we run them over feeders and stuff because we like to know what deer are around and what's going on. But we don't hunt around our feeders at all. We literally are running the feeders in Ohio just to keep the deer as much as we can in the property, trying to get them to survive until dark. You know what I mean?
Do you think is that working for you, Ben? I mean, are you guys?
It does. Yeah, it absolutely does. Because the second we don't have them full, we lose them.
Yeah, and you run them the whole season.
We try. I mean, it gets expensive.
It's expensive, yeah. I mean,
you run feed or like a protein feed or just corn. You run the analogics or?
Again, you get to a point where you get tired of helping all your neighbors.
Sure.
Yeah. Sell everything.
That's why I don't.
You know what I mean? But no, we keep them full. I mean, it's I have my partner in buying land, Dan, he's very great about that. Like he really takes a lot of effort into keeping those feeders full because we have just seen the difference that it's made in getting some of those 2.5 and 3.5-year-old deer through the season. And again, I know this is so controversial because you can get hated on so bad because people are saying all us hunters have to stick together. Right. And I'm not saying I agree with that. And I'm not knocking anybody that's baiting and shooting deer over bait or out of a box blind. I mean, I just killed this deer in Illinois out of a box blind. But what I'm getting at is that I've just seen how much it's changed. And the last time that we got to talking about this, I got so much hate mail. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's the story of our lives.
Did you?
I mean, but it was like,
what about?
Well, just because I had said, I had made the comment that since the baiting, the crossbows, and all this stuff have become so prevalent in Ohio, I have just seen so much difference in the age structure of the deer in my general neck.
That's a fact, though.
Right. What's the hate? It's just it's observation. I mean,
you don't see during gun season, you don't see the amount of trucks parked during gun season as you do during bow season.
That's exactly it.
Yeah,
and that's why it sounds like a ghost town. Like
well, all you got to do is go to Miller's Gun and Supply. Those guys are like my best friends over there, and they will tell you they sell it's an astronomical amount of crossbows compared to compounds.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. And they just say, how many guys that come in there and buy one and are literally hunting the next day or that night, it's just kind of the old adage of the guy that went to Walmart and bought a slug gun and goes hunting,
dude, it's no different than in Pennsylvania. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, on the opening day of Pennsylvania gun season, I mean, it was a war zone. I couldn't even tell you how many shots I would hear on opening day. If I hear 20, 25 now, it's not because there's just that many less hunters. It's because most of the guys have already killed their bucks in archery season with a crossbow.
Yeah,
it's a fact.
It's a tough road to hoe because we need the hunters and it's good to have guys out there. But it's a fact that it has changed our area. Like in my area, it has for sure. Nobody can tell me any different. They can say, well, you can't prove it. And maybe I can't. But since it's gotten the way that it has and the land base is changing as far as ownership and more land getting split up into smaller parcels and more hunters and everybody wants to kill a buck. And I mean, it's, I don't know. It's just sad to see the amount of non-existent big mature deer anymore that we used to see.
Boy,
you really got to find one. It's hard.
You talk about parcel split ups. I've seen that a lot in Ohio here, even in the last few months, of a lot of auctions taking farms that are, decent size, 200-300 acre farms, but 7 to 10 parcels out of that. I mean,
yeah. Well, there's one getting ready to come up right by us now. It's 200 acres and 11 parcels.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, is it just trying to wring out as much money as possible? I mean,
there's a couple realty companies that's their number one goal.
Wow.
Is to milk every little dime they can. Now, granted, they feel their job's to get the landowner as much as they can.
Yeah.
The landowner still has to agree to it, so it's everybody's fault.
Sure.
But my goodness, man, it comes to a point when, have a little pride in the ground.
I mean, that's a huge factor right there. I mean, all of a sudden now you've got
what's happened in my neck of the woods is old Ethel's farm that was 150 acres got broke into 4 or 5 parcels.
Yep.
Now you've got these families of guys hunting them, and each one of them has a son or two or whatever. And the old adage is, we all talk about the deer. Yeah, we'll pass this buck. Well, then, the star 3-year-old walked in front of little Johnny.
Sure.
And he couldn't tell his son he can't shoot it. And I get that. But when there's 15 little Johnnies now in that block, it takes its toll.
Yep.
Because nobody wants to tell a kid he can't kill a buck. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, there comes a point where the management has to go out the window because these kids just need to have fun and not worry about what they're killing. 14-year-old kid shouldn't have to worry about, well, that deer's not big enough.
Right, exactly.
So,
well, honestly, it's just they're getting to that point that decisions have to be made way too frequently, and it's because of some of those technologies that we talked about that's happening. It's dude, what was the likelihood of 15 years ago, a 15-year-old kid stumbling into an opportunity at a 150-inch 3-year-old? It didn't really happen. They had no, they didn't have.
No, he shot the first 1 or 2-year-old that came through because he didn't even know that 3-year-old.
Well, we just talked on the last podcast about how bad we were at hunting at 15 years old, and we didn't have the cell cams to tell us anything, or the weapon in a crossbow to be able to make those kind of shots. We just weren't doing it. I didn't shoot a 3-year-old until I was 16, 17 years old.
I probably didn't see a 3-year-old until I was 16 or 17 years old.
Well, dude, Ben, to backtrack it real quick, we've had to almost change, not our opinion on it has not changed at all. If anything, it's I think become more solidified, but we have tried to be probably more sensitive about how we talk about it, because when you say things like, wow, these guys are hunting for corn piles or this or that, or it's not that we get accused a lot of it's a purist mentality, or we feel like people should be doing it a certain way. And I really don't think we feel that way at all. It really comes down to that has led to just a decline in the experience for everyone. And each there's all these factors that play a role. Like in Ohio, it's like the crossbows have always been legal, but the technology's evolved. The cell cameras, never really were restricted, but the technology's evolved. The corn piles were never legal, but certainly we use them way more than we ever have. The parcel sizes have continued to get smaller, and that's definitely happening too. And so now we're finding ourselves like in an environment here where, and no offense, but also to put some pressure on them at the same time, it's like Mike Rex and those guys have not done anything to restrict our opportunity to harvest them. And so while it continues to get easier, there's nothing on the back end to say, okay, well, here's what we're going to do to protect the resource. Not like nothing.
Well, and I think that's what the three of us are all concerned about. It's not how I don't give a shit how people hunt.
I'm not sitting here trying to knock somebody because of how they hunt.
Yeah.
No,
it's
really the resource
because of like what I've seen. Like, and I understand that maybe I look at mature deer differently than some people. Some guys just want to go out and hunt and have fun and like they work. I get it. I totally understand that, and I don't want to take that away from them. So it is such a fine line. All I am saying is to a guy like me that likes to hunt big mature deer, it is very hard to do that where I live now, to shoot a deer 160 plus anymore that is 5 years old or older.
Well, dude, what do you think? What do you think of this? What you're saying is not going to take an opportunity away from anybody. What took opportunities away from people was, frankly, in my opinion, it was crossbows, because that's what got people to a point there where they were willing to buy land
or lease it.
So they lost their access, and now they don't have places to go, and now they're at that point. So it literally is the very thing that they're saying is we want people to have opportunity is what is taking away the opportunity in the long term.
Yeah, and everybody keeps saying, well, it's a rich man's sport now, and only guys like, people in the industry or, people that have great jobs can afford the land. Well, in my area, it's a couple different things. I mean, the land is extremely high priced anymore. Like it's crazy high. And a lot of that is because, and there's just and this isn't a like culture slap or anything, but the Amish community is really heavy east of me, and it's moving west.
Yep.
And they, they just need places to go.
Yeah.
And so they're moving, and they don't hold back. I mean, they will pay what it takes to get the land bought, and they literally fight each other to get it. And
they depend on that for their livelihood.
Yeah. Well, that, and a lot of them are just buying it for hunting purposes anymore. And it is what it is, but now they're starting to move some different communities that way too. So there's more being bought, and new churches starting and stuff, which is fine, whatever. But what I'm saying is that has totally changed the price of land. It has also changed the price of leases with, and there's a ton of outfitters anymore in Ohio with no restrictions whatsoever.
Yeah, none.
There's no restrictions on outfitters. And so a guy that can sell 300 hunts if he wants to, and there's outfitters that do it in Ohio.
Yep.
Knowing that they're taking the money from somebody that is not going to get an opportunity at the deer they're wanting to.
No. Yeah, they're hunting 50 guys through a 200-acre farm. Yeah,
well, I mean, and it's sad that Ohio is not protecting our resource any better than that. It's literally become like so for instance, you can't sell deer meat. What's the difference? I mean, and I used to sell deer hunts. The reason I quit was because I didn't want to sell any more than 35 to 45 hunts a year, and I was running 7,000 acres.
Right.
And I wouldn't conform to the whole. I could have made tons of money. I could have sold 150 hunts if I wanted to.
Right.
But I knew I was just taking money from somebody at that point.
Yeah, and the resource couldn't sustain it.
And the resource suffers. And so,
Well, you talk about the fun side of things, Ben, and I hear that kind of a lot. It's like, well, I just want to go out and I'm going to have fun. It's like, well, if are you going to not have fun if you just go out there and shoot, a 1-year-old buck or shoot does? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you have to shoot a 160-inch 3-year-old to have fun? I don't think so. Like, it doesn't seem like you do.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
It's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got the, so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance.
Sure.
The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt, it stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt. So anyways, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I grew up having a blast deer hunting, and like I said, I don't know when the first time I saw a deer over 3 was. Like, I didn't need to kill a 3-year-old 150-inch deer to have fun hunting.
Yeah.
So I think that's the scape right there. It's like,
it's so frustrating because it just doesn't seem that hard to fix. Like, there are things that are going to be really hard to put back in the bag, but how we can't all agree, that there needs to be some restrictions in place just blows my mind. Mm-hmm. And we've heard the argument from the state is that they won't do anything that they feel could potentially lose hunters, but there is no response to, well, you're losing hunters now.
Well, there's a bunch of issues that I think are already that pose big problems. Like an easy regulation, because the resource should favor the residents, is to do something to restrict non-residents. They foot 70% of the bill. Mm-hmm. So that's done. Like, that setup basically, and it's not like you can go back to the Ohio landowners and say, hey, you're going to have to buy a license now. They've tried, and it's like it blown up. Huge. Well,
there's also a lot of things in the meantime, and sure, if that's what Ohio residents want, then I guess that's the point that you get to. But I feel like there's a lot of things that you could try to handle up first, before cutting anybody's access off.
Sure.
In any state.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that's why I was trying to, like, with me, the happy medium is, because, keeping the youth involved and stuff. Like, obviously, kids get to see more deer, whether it's a food plot or a feeder or bait or whatever, that keeps kids interested,
Sure.
And I guess, like, when I was growing up, and just like, probably you guys when you were younger, I mean, this sport wasn't like it is right now. It has definitely changed.
Yes.
I mean, I shot my first deer ever sitting on public land in the hills of Ohio, with a 80-year-old man sitting beside me, and shot him with a 12-gauge slug gun, and it was a spike, and
the old man,
you'd have thought I shot a booner.
Yeah, same.
And so it's just, things are just different, and so I guess, a guy like me has to conform and understand too that everybody doesn't think the same way I do. But it's just hard, I guess, because, like when you go, and people don't believe me when I say this, but this is the honest to God's truth. I haven't had a picture of a 180-inch deer in Ohio in so long, it is sickening.
Yeah.
Like 10 years or longer.
Wow.
And I used to have pictures of 3 a year.
Yeah.
Or 3 a year were bigger.
Mm.
I don't even hardly find booners anymore. I mean, yes, I did kill one last year, but that deer was on a farm that, I'd had the lease on that farm for a long, long time. And, we'd killed some good deer off of it, and this deer happened to be 171 or whatever. But, that farm just sold at auction into 12 parcels.
Jeez.
So it's gone, and I just got wind from the neighbor the other day. So I was able to keep 18 acres of it, to lease 18 acres off of a lady I knew that bought 18 acres. And it was the worst 18 acres of the whole farm. But we put a feeder on it, and I knew those deer were close that I had been raising on that farm. And they were all coming to the feeders. Every one of them is dead now.
Wow.
6 bucks have been shot out of that 300-acre block.
Yep. Yeah, all because it got subdivided.
Yep, they're all dead.
Yep.
Every one of them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think going back to your point, Ben, when like you talk about growing up and killing, the same thing. I killed a spike for my first year, in Pennsylvania public with a 30-30. And I know for a fact that there were, even though it was hard, there were still guys who were looking and trying to kill big bucks. So like there was a group of us who just went out and deer hunted and lived for it and had fun. But I was killing the first legal buck I saw. There were also a group who were out there passing a lot of bucks to hunt a giant, to find a big buck.
Well, everybody evolves. And I guess that's what I'm saying. So like, I don't see these young kids needing to pass up deer. I understand that.
Yeah.
But when you get to a point where you've shot numerous Pope and Youngs or really good bucks, there shouldn't be this push to just fill your buck tag.
It stopped, man. Somewhere along the lines, the mindset of evolving to become better, or it's gone. It's faded.
It hit a ceiling of what's possible, because it's like, how are you going to ever evolve into something that's not possible? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but not for a lot of these guys. They're just failing to evolve. Like, you can kill a 3-year-old every year if you want to.
Yeah.
And if you kill a 3-year-old every year.
Yeah, but you're reaching, that is about the threshold. I mean, depending on where you're at. Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys, dude, my uncle is
okay, well, then you just have to be okay with eating your tag, which they're not. That's the problem.
Well, and maybe they are for a few years, but it's like, how many years do you eat your tag before you're like, what am I doing? This is stupid. Like, I'm here to kill deer. So there is a barrier that's set in place by, the deer on the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
But it's both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you.
I mean, and I guess it's, not everybody has the same opportunities as far as like, I get that all the time, like, well, I don't have the money to afford a lease, or, I don't have the money to buy that farm or whatever. Well, man, I never did either. Like, I didn't come from money. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth.
Yeah.
It's like Cameron Haynes saying, work harder.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not going to get sympathy from me in that sense, because nobody handed me this life, and I'm not rich. I'm rich in a lot of ways, but like, I'm not sitting here with millions of dollars in my bank account.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I've bought some dirt. I have some leases, but I find ways to make that happen. It's my priorities that, like it's been a huge priority in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, dude, if people could understand like the sacrifice that you've made, I mean, to you, it just seems like it's just what you do. And for us too, it's just like, I wouldn't have it any other way. But if people understood, could literally see on paper, the things you've probably given up to gain the access that you have, it would just blow people's mind, I'm sure.
Yeah. Or the amount of time that how you treat landowners and different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to explain that to people, make them truly understand our side. But, and it's, and it goes both ways. I mean, we can sit here and talk about crossbow hunters. Traditional hunters are going to sit here and say us compound hunters aren't real hunters. And, it goes on and on and on. We have to support each other. I do understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I just simply was saying that, like, what I have seen happen in my state, in Ohio, from the baiting perspective, and then traveling to places like Illinois or Iowa or even Missouri that has a very liberal rifle season, but you can't bait there. It's amazing the difference.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, I mean, it just is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that, we've had that conversation multiple times, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, the sad truth is that there probably are a lot of people in the state of Ohio who could not kill a deer without a corn pal. Whether that's because of where they're hunting and or the skill that they have. One of the two. Like, and I don't say that disrespectfully, but it's
I don't know.
I do think that's where it's at.
Well, but dude, there's so many possibilities. Like, I just hate coining somebody as like a crossbow hunter or a corn pile hunter, because like anybody can be any one of those things at any time. It's like, so if you said, okay, hey, there's no more corn piles, it's not that those people that were hunting over corn piles exclusively, maybe there's a learning curve out of it, but it's like, okay, maybe they struggle with whatever, if they were hunting with a bow or a crossbow.
Yeah.
And I mean,
go kill one with a gun.
You can go kill one with a gun. Like, there's so many different ways to do it. And like, I would say, Well, I don't know, man. I mean, that's where you get into like
It's such a slippery slope to talk about.
well, no, it's not like I'm worried about a misstep on that. It's just like they're different things to me. Like the corn plow allows you to be selective to target, a certain kind of deer. The gun is more effective at killing deer than a corn plow. I would say, you know what I mean? So it's just in what you want. That's why it's probably challenging from a restriction standpoint to say, well, here's this, here's that. It's like, but you also you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's too. I mean, and I think a lot of it's on a state level as far as like how much do they really care about the resource? Do they really care? Like
definitely
and I mean, just like bobcats. Let's just take that little simple animal right there. They are insanely populated.
It's thick everywhere, dude. I couldn't believe how many I've seen on my farm in the last week in Ohio.
And, I've talked to some game wardens about it. I've talked to them, and they're like, well, just fill out some information and send it in and tell me. Come on. Everybody knows. Like, they're getting hit on the roads.
Yeah.
Like,
they're everywhere.
I have more pictures. This is no kidding. I have more pictures of bobcats than I do coyotes anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
And you can't tell me, and people try to tell me, oh, they don't hurt the turkeys. Bull crap.
No, they definitely do.
Those things are the most ultimate hunter.
Mm-hmm.
A gobbling turkey is a sitting duck.
Yeah.
For a bobcat.
So is a fawn.
Yeah, I mean,
well, they do know that.
But they won't give us a season for it.
Well,
and when they finally do it, because eventually they will, I'm guessing, but it'll be like you can get one.
It'll be so restrictive. It'll be like a lottery even.
Yeah, here's a tag, and like, dude, they have 6 in a litter.
Yeah.
Well, again, it was Mike that explained it to us as like it was on the table, and his claim for why it got denied was that they felt like it was a political weakness for like exposing other hunting seasons. They're like, if we try to give this a season, then the anti-hunting whatever lobbyists or communities are going to come after other hunting seasons, and that's like a risk they weren't willing to take. That was how it was explained, was it not?
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day,
and we're like, okay, they almost said like it's not worth it.
What are you gonna do? Are you gonna take away deer season? Nobody's gonna listen.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares. Yeah.
Look what just happened in Colorado. Nobody thought that was gonna pass, and it did.
Yep. Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, dude, we were all shocked that Trump won. I mean, we all knew he was gonna get the popular vote, but we figured for sure there'd be some way they'd screw it up, and he'd.
Yep.
I couldn't believe it went over the way it did.
I know.
Like, without a hit.
Well,
and we both killed bucks on that night too.
Yeah.
And that's the information though that just continues to get shuffled out there to where you're trying to think, well, I don't know, maybe there isn't a chance that this happens, or maybe this will happen as a rebuttal to it.
Yeah.
And
I'm just saying, I just wish that the state would care a little more, like, as far as like really looking at it as what we all know. I mean, numerous people that do deer management for a living will tell you, like Higgins and other people, they'll tell you Ohio has as much potential to not be the best state for producing big bucks than anywhere in the Midwest.
Yep.
And it does.
Yeah.
Well, there's always giants killed every year. There's giants shot in Ohio. We know that.
Sure.
But, it's...
I mean, there's those giants are getting shot. There's just less.
What do you think, Ben? Did you happen to listen to that Spooks Band episode we did?
I haven't yet. No, I haven't listened to much of anything this year.
Yeah, no worries. You should check that one out. He gave an interesting perspective on Ohio. You know who Spook is, right?
Yeah. I know Spook well.
Yeah, so I mean, you kill a lot of big high scoring deer and stuff, and quite a few of them from Ohio. And his perspective on Ohio was basically that the reason we have so many is because of the number of high fence operations, over the years. He's thinking that a lot of these like mega freak genetics have come from farms, like either deer that got released during the recession, like in 2008 and stuff, or that just got out over time from, storms and stuff like that.
No kidding.
And he said a very matter of fact, he's like, well, yeah, obviously that's
well, he's like, I knew guys during the recession in 2008 that had does that they just couldn't afford to feed, and they just kicked them out.
Yeah. Huh.
Which would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
Where are those properties exactly at?
Wouldn't you love to know?
Broad spectrum, though, as Ohio is, and the kind of deer that are getting shot just basically across the whole state.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's probably some very good truth to that, but I don't know that that's the whole thing. You know, I mean,
Sure.
I think
doubt there was very few farms in Adams County.
Yeah.
Deer farms.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I do think that Mike Rex, I think that Tonkovich, I think those guys absolutely care about the deer herd.
Oh, I know
and where
Mike
things-
Rex cares.
Yeah, they do.
I know he cares.
But the political system that runs the DNR, right? It's a super agency, which means it goes clear up to DeWine, the governor.
Mm-hmm.
Along that way, there's a lot of interference. You know, it's just like when Tonkovich was talking to us about DMAP, and it's like, well, dude, it seems stupid that, you know, even with management tags in Meigs County, I can kill a buck and 2 does, right? That's it. Like, I need to kill 10 maybe on my farm. He's like, well, DMAP would make sense. And I'm like, why didn't it happen? He's like, I don't know. Good question. Like, you know, it's there's people making decisions that have no idea.
Well, it's not that they don't have an idea. It's that's been a lot of like over the 2-3 years we've been trying to talk to these guys is you do some fact finding about what is the motive, like who are the stakeholders here, and you know we'd love to sit here and say, well, yeah, it's the resource. You know, we're trying to manage for the best possible deer herd, and that you know. It's just not happening. It just isn't happening. You know, you have guys like Tonk, whose job it is to make suggestions based on the deer herd. So there you go. You can get some straight language on, well, hey, we should have a DMAP program. We should have this, and that. And we know those get proposed. And then he doesn't really have an answer for, or just can't say like why they don't happen. He's like, I don't know. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. Well, and because we know, you know, politically, number of hunters is important to, you know, and Mike Rex will tell you that. He's like, hey, that's we need to have that. And I sympathize with Mike's position. I don't mean to put him, you know, in the but he's in the grinder or whatever, but he, you know, he's in that position. And the other one that I think he brushed off and said wasn't as big of a deal, but how could it not be, is that non-licensed revenue is like 70% of the state income for licenses. So obviously they care about that too. Yeah, huge amount of money. Not to mention just the economic impact that non-residents have in the state of Ohio. It's giant. Yeah.
One thing I think, like in my personal opinion, is like, you know, it costs us a lot of money to hunt out of state.
Oh yeah.
Like Ohio is extremely cheap.
It is very cheap.
It's too cheap. And that's why it's an outfitter's dream as far as getting hunters.
Yep.
You know, because guys don't have to spend $600 to get a deer tag.
You think that would change anything, Ben? Making it more expensive?
Yes.
You do?
I think it would help. I think it would definitely help as far as just the regular, you know, amount of people that come. Maybe not so much the guys that are buying a deer hunt, but it's going to affect it some because these guys are charging, you know, typically up to $4,000 now for a 5-day whitetail hunt. You know, and you add another $500, $575 to it.
I think it would deter
plus
people.
They got to figure a tip in. That starts cutting into somebody's pocketbook pretty heavy.
Well, I think the biggest, and it will be, I don't know how substantial it'll be, but it'll definitely affect Ohio is hopefully next year, Pennsylvania will legalize Sunday hunting for all Sundays, and that will reduce the amount of Pennsylvanians coming to Ohio to hunt. That's one of the biggest reasons they go there is because they can't hunt Sundays here.
I agree.
And we are the number one non-resident in the state of Ohio hunting.
Well, it's also because, at least it's the perception, Ohio just generally has better deer.
It does, but I think a lot of it is
it's close.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is they've got an extra day in the weekend and they can't hunt here.
I just find myself on the side of like if there was 2 ways to look at how do we just give everybody a better experience, I find myself less on the wanting to restrict access or opportunity or, you know, whether it's by saying no to non-residents or like lottery systems or even increasing the cost. And maybe there's a place for all that, and way more on the side of like, why don't we just find a way to have more big deer on the landscape? Like that seems entirely possible. We just need to make them harder to kill.
I mean,
everybody's still going to be able to do it and have a great time doing it. There's just there should be more of them.
I haven't looked, but I would assume we have less hunters in Ohio than we did 10 or 20 years ago.
Apparently,
right?
They just had a record harvest. I think highest opening day gun harvest since 2012. Which I'm sure they'll wave the flag and say, "Look what we did," but it's obviously because of like the cold temperatures. So
sure, yeah,
that's what happens in a condensed season like that.
But I mean, there's less hunters, right?
I would say yes. Yeah, yes, definitely there is.
Which
again, it's funny because I told my wife the other day before I left to go to Illinois. I left Sunday after church, but Saturday before we went out to eat and did some shopping and stuff and spent time with the family. And I cannot tell you the amount of pickup trucks and tractors pulling trailers with loads and loads of corn the last week and a half that I saw going down our road, our area, with guys dispersing them. And I knew the weather was coming, and I told her, I said, there are going to be so many deer shot during gun season this year. It's going to blow everybody's mind.
Yeah.
Because they can't stand it. They got to go to the food, when it's that cold. And I mean, probably a lot of happy young kids that got cracks at deer, and you like to see people be successful, but it's just that tightrope. But, we could talk about that forever, and everybody has different opinions, but yeah, for me, it definitely has been a different year. I mean, I've had to really grind this year, and, wasn't quite sure really what was causing a lot of it, but gave me time to start thinking about different things I could do on my property, or the places I can hunt or even have access to or lease. It's made me search myself. It's made me wonder, like, man, do I idolize the whitetail too much, and I'm putting too much effort into this, and I could be doing other things? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, do you really think so, Ben? I mean, I'm not questioning what you're saying there, but just I'm always skeptical of the statement, because I find myself saying, I'm like, oh, it's a weird year. It's this or it's that. And I mean, if you step back objectively, like, do you feel like is that something we say every year? You're like, oh, it's been a weird year, or this year, really?
No, I mean, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm blowing my own horn, but I felt lost this year at times. Like, I'm like, do I even know how to deer hunt? Like, why am I making the wrong moves or the wrong decisions? Because and I've had, I mean, like, for me to spend the amount of time I've spent this year grinding and to not killed sooner than I have killed is kind of very, very odd, and to not even see the deer I was after, or to even find deer to hunt that I was wanting to find, was just a very, very, very strange thing for me. So it really started to make me feel like a dang failure, to be honest. Like, holy smokes, like, what am I doing wrong? But it also made me dig deep and made me realize that, like, sometimes you think you're being humble, and you think that, but sometimes things can go to your head, and I mean, I'm like, well, maybe you aren't as good as you think you are. So, you better it makes you reevaluate stuff.
Yeah.
And it's good to go through some suffering like that. I mean, even the Bible says that. So you just, and so I really just tried to, embrace it. And that's why, like, every deer I've shot this year, I've tried to soak it up a little more, because I didn't kill my first deer till November 5th, which was very strange. And so again, I'm just saying, like, I felt like I had to get back to understanding why I love to whitetail hunt and why I truly did it. I didn't, a guy like me that, where it's part of my living, everybody thinks this is my living, but it's not my living. I mean, it's part of it, but the logging and the timber is my main living. But, a guy like me can get caught up in trying to keep the sponsors happy, your contractual obligations, your fans, like, you feel the pressure, and sometimes you're hunting for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, this is taking the fun out of it. And I need to enjoy this land that I've worked hard for. And I need to appreciate this whitetail more than just, it's another kill for a whitetail edge video, and I've really tried to do that. And like this last year I killed, I didn't even post it till the next day, because I just wanted to suck it up and enjoy the moment, and not deal with all the texts. And I wanted to just enjoy having killed a nice mature buck. And it wasn't a giant. I mean, I didn't even score it yet, but I'm guessing it's mid 50s, you know what I mean? But just a good 5-year-old deer.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Muddy and Stealth Cam trail cameras.
Cell cams, cell cams, cell cams. What an evolution the industry has seen, and we've experienced personally over the past 5, 10, whatever cameras were invented, right? It's like, man, it's totally changed the way that we inventory deer, pattern deer, and ultimately the decisions that we make when we're going out to hunt. They're a serious piece of the puzzle, and that information is invaluable for us. We trust the Muddy and Stealth cams, together to be able to collect any of that information.
Yeah, I mean, as an admitted trail cam addict, I've definitely been guilty of underhunting places or relying too heavily on that information that's come in. That said, it's an invaluable tool to the overall management plan and strategy that I have for my own properties or even hunting public land. It doesn't matter. We have a finite amount of time in going out and hunting. So when you and I are after a particular class or quality of deer, usually a mature buck, we can't waste time hunting an area where that deer doesn't exist. And those cell cams provide that information that allow us to spend the time in the area with the highest chance to accomplish our goals.
Say it all the time, man. It can't kill them if they're not there.
That's it.
So right now, any of our listeners can use code HUNTR20 to get 20% off either Muddy or Stealth cameras. We're certainly going to be taking advantage of that, and we hope you guys do too.
Yep, check out Stealth Cam and Muddy. So Ben, what did you reset? Like, as you kind of were going through there mentally, I mean, was it strategy as well? Like in terms of like, boy, the things that I've thought I need to be doing aren't working. I need to reset my brain here and do some stuff differently.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is so like, I can't even tell you how many guys email me, PM me, and I feel bad because, like, a lot of times I don't check PMs. Like, this time of year, man, I, like, fall off the map because, like, I'm so geared and focused on what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But so many guys text me, can you look at this map, tell me what to do? What would you be doing this time? Blah, blah, blah. And I always have an answer for everybody.
Yeah.
And then they text me back, like, dude, that worked perfect. You know what I mean? Or whatever. And then it's like myself, I don't catch myself asking myself those questions. I'm just Ben Rising going out and doing my thing. And, like, so I really had to like step back and be like, okay, what would you tell somebody to do right now, Ben?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you do? Like, ask yourself this question, put yourself in a struggling guy's shoes and say, well, how would you hunt today? And so I started really going back, like, through my, tactics, and just instead of just 100% going by my gut, like I do a lot of times, because a lot of times I already know what my deer are doing or the deer that I'm hunting, and, have a good idea. Well, this year I didn't have that on a lot of deer. So some deer didn't even show up till, late. So I just kind of had to really focus on strategy a little more. Like I said, it gave me time to sit in a stand and look at things and go, okay, this is something I can do different in this spot to make it a little more effective.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have like an accountability partner when it comes to hunting strategy? I know for a while you were tight with like Mark Drury and stuff. I know you would call him a lot so because with me, it's like, dude, I call Jeremy constantly when I'm in the woods. I'll say, like, it's like every 10 steps in a scouting mission, I'm like, oh dude, here's what I found. And it's like, I know what he's going to say, but I'm looking for affirmation for what I'm thinking. And he does the same, and so we're constantly like bouncing stuff off of each other.
About the really, and it's funny you asked that because like I literally just sent Mark a text about 5 days ago, but it's not so much strategy. It's typically Mark is really good at helping judge deer on age.
Yeah.
And so I sent a couple pictures of a certain deer to Mark, and I was like, do you think this deer is, I've sent him last year's pictures and this year, and last year was the first year I'd ever seen him. And then got pictures of him again this year, and he kind of did the same thing, but he kind of like lost some trash and things, and his body's just confusing. And I, in my personal opinion, felt like he's started to feel like he's older than I thought, and he's actually going downhill. And Mark kind of confirmed that, the same thing. And that's where I rely on Mark a lot like that sometimes, But Mark is super analytical about certain things. And so is Terry. I mean, that's how, like, honestly, that's how DeerCast evolved. Was because of their minds, the way that they truly looked at everything over the years and put it together. I mean, I'm not quite as scientific, I guess, about it. Like, I guess I know that rising barometer, rising moon, falling moons, different, weather patterns, things like that. I know all that, but I didn't take it to this nth level like they do, and to be able to create an app around it. And, I guess that's why they call Mark the mad scientist too. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
Mark is just very good about those kinds of things, but like what I respect about Mark a lot is Mark is a super smart guy. Like, I mean, from stupid questions, from fertilizer to this, I don't know how he knows it all, but he just does.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, sometimes I even shake my head. How does he even know that?
Yeah.
But he does. You know what I mean? So he's just been one of my, I don't know, like Mark has just really been a guy I've looked up to my whole entire life. Same with Terry, but I communicate with Mark more than I do Terry, but Mark is just a super intelligent person when it comes to this sport.
In terms of like this year, in talking to Mark and Terry, do you think that those guys affirmed kind of what you're seeing, which is just that it was just a weird year? These deer seem to be dispersed, or what were they seeing that too?
Well, I didn't really ask Mark about that, because like every time you'd look at DeerCast or social media, it seemed like they just killed another one.
Yeah.
Like they killed a ton of deer on Iowa this
Well,
year.
it took a while, didn't it? Was it this year or was it last year? I remember at a certain point I was like,
No, they whacked the crap out of them. But like Terry, so Matt made the comment to me because me and him were talking, because I was getting a little pressure because I wasn't killing much, and Terry had literally just killed a big buck, and he goes, yeah, but he goes, you don't understand. He goes, that's the first deer he's killed this year too, and he goes, he hunted his butt off for that deer,
Right.
and he just killed another one now, so I think he's killed 2 or maybe more, I don't know, but it was tough on Terry the start of it too. Now he was focused on one deer pretty good, I guess, but I was hunting multiple areas and grinding.
Yeah.
I've put more all day sits in this year than I ever had in my life, and was struggling. So, but yeah, I don't know how to answer that. But I've had more people tell me this year it's been a strange year than anybody, and I don't know if that's just a fluke. I don't know what would cause it, but I've had a lot of different people say it was a strange year.
Yeah. Yeah, it just seems weird. Like there's deer that and not that they were going to be like super giants or anything, but there's just deer that I'm like, okay, he'll be back and he'll be whatever 4, or this deer will be 5 this year. And like they've always been there, and I've found sheds, or I've seen them in February or whatever, and like they just never showed. And it's like, okay, well, then you start to worry about EHD. Well, there's no EHD in the area or wherever. And those are the things that just start to, there's nothing that drives you more crazy than wondering what the hell happened to them. Like, I'd rather know that they died than just not know anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I truly think that you're going to find that a lot of it is due more to what your neighbors and surrounding people are starting to do.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that makes a lot of sense, Ben. Didn't think about it, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and Ben's talking about like habitat improvements, but it's also if they're killing them and you just don't know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah. Or one got wounded. And because I have found this a lot. I have figured out that guys that wound one of the bigger deer in the area that everybody knows about, if that guy wounds it, he doesn't tell.
He doesn't say shit. No,
he don't want anybody to know he did it.
No.
And then all of a sudden they find Big Mo laying in a creek somewhere, and somebody shed hunting. They're like, man, I wonder who hit it, and and it never comes out.
Right. Mm-hmm. No, I think that is a big factor. It's an embarrassment factor, right?
Yeah. But yeah, there's just multiple things, and so like for instance, like I was talking to one of the Ohio game wardens here last winter. Super nice guy. He's a good game warden too, and he was saying, and not trying to get back on the corn pile kick, but we were just talking about it. And he goes, it would literally blow your mind when the snow is on and you fly over this state in a plane and the amount of corn piles you can see. He goes, it, literally blows your mind.
Well, I think that's
but then
the
you go
hard
from
part.
that, same with food plots, like updated aerials and things. You start seeing your neighbors are doing more things.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest part, whether it's a corn pile or a new food plot or whatever.
My
it's
neighbors
like,
aren't doing crap with food plots.
yeah. Well, those are the things that start to, like, a deer can pull into that area and disappear from your life completely. And he's just over there, just living on, a corn pile that's continually being replenished, or a feeder that's being replenished, or they created a 1 acre brassica field, or they left an acre of beans that they never, whatever. Like, he just lives there. I think the other thing that I've started to come to realize more this year, and it was because this is the first summer, at least in Ohio, that I'm like, I had a lot of 4 and 5 year old bucks on my property in August and even early September. It's like those deer just can't live together on 200 acres. Like, they just can't. Yeah. They won't do it. They won't tolerate it. They can't do it. Eventually, people leave, right? The deer leave.
And it's truthfully the same with corn piles too. I will say this. So, like, guys that are just feeding in one spot like that, those big mature deer, some of them are going to leave.
Yeah, they're going to leave.
That's easy food. They're going to leave because they can't handle that social pressure.
No.
You'll get one that'll stick, but my recommendation to people that do want to feed deer consistently is don't feed them just straight corn, because it's not good for them.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, spread it out. Like, feed multiple places on your property. So if you want to hold deer on your place, because you need to let them disperse and not feel so pressurized socially.
Yeah.
It'll change things for people.
Agree. Yeah. I think that's a big factor, but I say that because, most of us aren't hunting 2,000 acres, right? Like it's
exactly.
So when you've got,
even if it's 100 acres,
spread it out.
Yeah, even food plots, like even if you have 40 acres, try to put a couple different spots for deer to feed, or maybe the Big Ten shows up at the front northeast plot, and then he realizes, oh, the Big 8's there. He's a butthole, and he can go then back to the back and feed somewhere else. You know,
and they will overlap. That's the cool thing about it. They're not going to coexist like you see in the summer and early fall. They just won't.
Yeah.
Ben, have you come full circle on your weird season yet at all? I mean, looking back on it kind of now, have you figured out either where some of these deer went, or, I guess what was happening? You know what I mean? What do you think? Was it just you were struggling to find the deer to begin with? And it's like, obviously you can't put a strategy together for something that's not there type of a thing, or?
Well, so the biggest deer that I had, yes, I think he's just dead.
Mm.
He died. I don't know that he died. I shouldn't say that, but I would bet a ton of money that he died.
This is Illinois.
Yeah,
and you're thinking
I know that deer very well for the last couple years.
Yep,
and his routine, and for him to leave in August and never come back. Not once, even through the rut or anything. That does not make any sense.
Right.
Now even that it's late season and he knows I got food standing for him, he ain't been back. That makes no sense. So that deer in my mind is dead. I would bet the bank on it. But what I did learn, Jared, was I need to be better in all spots, all farms I hunt, all things, because I counted too much on just how the deer normally move or how I could get into spots. I feel like I need to be a little more effective at having more stand sites.
Yeah.
I don't know how a guy could say I could possibly need more stands, but more stand sites in areas that I know over the years what the deer have been doing, and know how to access those spots better. I have spots that I just know if you sit there 2-3 days in a row, you are going to shoot a big one. If the weather, if the wind is good.
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot about these deer I really started to pay attention this year in the hill country, how these deer really utilize the ravines, especially the big mature deer.
Mm-hmm.
We always think, and I've said this for years, 3/4 of the way to the top is a really good travel route for bucks. But I've also figured out, and I've known it, but I just never really needed to know it as much as I figured out this year, how many more of those really big deer, you look at those rough spots and you think those deer aren't going to go through that. Those suckers go right through it.
Yeah.
They prefer it at times. Like, I think they are able to keep wind funnels and thermals and everything in their discretion. When they grow up in some of this rough country, it doesn't bother them. Like,
No.
They've grown up in it as fawns. So they don't think anything of side hilling a super steep spot to get up to a cornfield, to where we're looking at it like, well, he's going to come up this nice flat, and they don't, Now, when you have a high deer population or quite a few mature bucks in an area, you're always going to get lucky and, pick some of those deer off in those spots or whatever, those easy spots. And I've done that over the years. And this year I really had to start focusing on, like, what am I missing now? If I'd have been there, I could have shot that deer tonight. And just watching how deer traveled, I just really started to relearn my stuff again this year a little bit. Like, tried to reset myself in a more of a novice type situation and really just like try to take some notes,
Yeah. Well, dude, we have that like in our part of Ohio too, which I guess is, compared to where you're at, I guess our stuff is a little more like cattle country, like less big timber.
Yeah.
And so we have some of those like little nasty, gnarly ditches. And I guess they are kind of ravines. If you look at the topography, like, yeah, there's a ravine there. But I had some cool experiences this year doing things that I felt were just like out of the box. I was like, I'm gonna come in this way and hang and hunt in the morning beside this ditch or whatever. And I got to see some of these bucks doing things that, like, I guess you could tell yourself that they're doing, but until you actually see them, not like in the ravine but literally like in the ditch, like with the logs laying over it and stuff, like tipping their heads back and forth. I'm like, them suckers are just,
yeah.
And then once you see it, you're like, of course, like if I was going to be in the most like inaccessible, safest spot ever, I would do it there. But it's just not, well, that third, that military crest of the ridge where I hinge cut is over there, but that's just not where they're at.
Yeah.
So
I've been huge over the years about using ditches or different things as access to get into places, and me and my camera guy, this year I filmed 98% of the hunts this year. All my hunting without a camera guy, but I had a camera guy for a couple of days. And I was like, we need to move. And I said, we got to get down out of this stand. I said, it just doesn't feel right. It's too windy up here. They're not going to come out to this spot till it's going to be too late in the evening. I said, we need to go to the bottom. I said, we're going to have to take our chances. We got to make something happen. I said, I got a stand. It's way down in the bottom, in a good funnel area. I said, we can walk this deep, steep ravine, drainage down into it the whole way, and we can not be seen by deer. And, knowing in that heavy wind that deer like to lay low and stuff, well, wouldn't you know it, that the deer that I was going in there to after was laying right in the drainage that literally stood up in front of me 40 yards and bounded out of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was laying right in it. Now, it wasn't wet because it's been an extremely dry year for the most part.
Yeah.
So there wasn't no water running through that drainage, where typically if there was water in it, he wouldn't have been laying in it, but he would have been close to it, But he was literally laying right in it by a log,
Crazy, man. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Rack Hub.
Well, dude, sheds are starting to hit the ground.
Yeah, and although we usually don't find many of them, we've done pretty well this season so far.
I would say for just, a handful of walks, we've got a pile of sheds to show for it. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, if shed season would end today, I think it was pretty successful.
So this year, we're partnering with Rack Hub. It's an antler mounting system for your sheds.
Yeah, and obviously, people who've watched our podcast, we've got this massive pile of sheds that are on the table at all times, but you guys took the time to set up Wide Boy's shed on the R1, which is a really cool way to now have that thing right off to my left-hand side during the podcast.
So some of these sheds just call for a little bit more appreciation, I guess. So rather than being on a pile on the table, we're going to mount them on the wall, and they look awesome. So
yeah. And so if anybody wants to try Rack Hub, you can use the code HUNTR10, HUNTR10 at rackhub.com to get 10% off your order.
Use Rack Hub to make the most of your shed season. Well, dude, what's there's probably a whole conversation around hunting bottoms or hunting, you know, if it's drainages or for whatever reason, the other one that's coming to my mind is western facing bowls is another one that I really struggle with. It's like, do you have I guess start with ditches. Like what is the thought process for, you're like, hey, I know all these ditches come together right here. Some guys will call it a thermal hub, and maybe there's a scrape down there or something. Do you hunt those, and how would you approach it?
Yeah. So like a few years ago, I killed a deer, and we called him Bottom Bill because that deer just loved being in the bottoms. Mm-hmm. Like the way he utilized the whole farm was bottoms. Like literally that deer knew that he could keep the winds, or he just felt so much safer utilizing the low areas of the whole farm, mm-hmm. you know, at the bottom of the ravines and moving around the whole thing. Now he would come to the top, obviously, but I ended up killing him in the bottom, where a couple different drainages basically met, and it just funneled the deer around. But I tried to set it up in the tree that I did to where I wasn't in the bottom. I was a little bit up the bank to give me a little more height to get a consistent wind somewhat, or even if it did swirl, I could be pretty high. But I tried to get it to where the wind would have been coming like with the drainages and with the thermals to blow it farther down in, but over the deer out to the creek or whatever. And that really works pretty good. I very, very seldom have been winded in that stand with any deer below me where I'm truly trying to get them. Now, like if they come off the side hill or something, they can get you. The wind can do some funny stuff, but you know, there comes a point with those bottoms that you literally just have to take some chances.
Sure.
You know, it's a chance taker, and you know, evenings are tough because your thermals are falling. But it's like some of those spots, I feel like you just got to get in there early and sit them out all day, or sit them to the point where you feel like the wind is absolutely killing you and you just got to get out, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For me, I think it's one of those things that like you can have a really good experience or a really bad experience just based on the farm. Like, cause I've noticed like on some areas on our Ohio farm, it's like, man, I can't hunt any of these ditches. Cause even if I can get it, you know, if I can get, you know, on this side of it in the evening, for instance, they all have little cricks in them, and the thermals are always pulling the opposite of like what I need the prevailing wind to be. And so it's like, but then I can go to another farm. I'm like, oh, okay. In this case, all the ridges, they all run this way. And it's like, I can use most of these to my advantage, and I can access from a perpendicular drainage. So, I mean, it's kind of a hit or miss. You're either going to, you know, or you just got to find them, I guess.
My biggest obstacle with hunting those spots is getting into them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they're literally, most of them are like below the feeding areas. Like, you know, the ag is up top.
Yep.
And all these areas are in the bottoms. Like, you know, the ag drains to these. And so you either have to come in from the top, or you have to find a way somewhere else to come in the bottom that you don't feel like you're bumping deer out. And if you come in too late in the morning, the deer up above you watching you come in, or if you try to hunt them in the evening, that's what I have found to be a very big hurdle this year, is how to get into spots to where I'm not feel like I'm ruining it before I get there.
Mm-hmm. Me too, man. I this year, probably more than ever before, I'm like, why am I hunting mornings? Like I never really felt like I got in clean, and even in areas where I feel like I have a good destination type of a setup, I'm like, okay, deer should be. I just have never been able to completely establish anywhere. I've seen it like in the Dakotas and like in Wyoming, like some of that type stuff. It's like, okay, very clear separation of ag and feeding versus like river bottom and bedding. But in Ohio and Illinois, and the short time we had in Iowa, like it just seems like it's all one and the same. I'm like, I don't know where I can get in without. There's just going to be deer there, like no matter what.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and that's the hard part. Like, and again, sometimes you just have to take that chance and hope that the deer you're after is not
right.
One thing I have noticed that when there is a high deer density, or, you know, an area that has good deer population, I used to, like years ago when I was growing up, if does started blowing in a woods, you know, like if a couple does got you and they started blowing, you might as well leave.
Yeah.
Because nothing was coming in there.
Yeah, they were gone.
I mean, nowadays with the deer populations we have, does can do that. And I've really especially noticed this in Missouri and Illinois where there's a lot of coyotes. Does can do that. And I mean, literally 5 minutes later, 160-inch deer could come strolling through there like it's nothing.
I
Yeah.
agree. I
Yeah.
think they want to come check it out sometimes. They're like, what was that?
Well, I mean, I've seen. I think this year was the first year that I heard that, and I'm like, damn, how is that doe winding me? And it was because there was a buck harassing her. There was a 3-year-old harassing the shit out of her, and she was blowing at his ass down there.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah,
So-
they do that. They do blow it, and that I've thought the same thing. Sometimes I'm like, well, maybe they'll think. I tell myself mentally, well, maybe another buck will think she was blowing at a buck.
Yeah.
Because I've seen them do that as they're literally running.
Absolutely. Yep.
You know, trying to get away from a buck because they're just irritated so bad.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that for the first time this year, and I was like,
There's also a fine line between a snort and a sneeze sometimes too. So like, I used to be real worried about like sniffling my nose or like, but anymore, as long as there's not one inside, I'll do a little snot rocket and clear
snot
myself
rocket.
out. I'm like, yeah, they think I'm a deer down here, get
Blowing
a
out.
little bot going on. Or
blowing the
something.
nasal
Well, how many
bots.
times do you hear a deer cough?
Oh, a ton.
All the time.
man.
It gives them away constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sometimes,
sitting
yeah,
there
it's
in
the
a
first thing
stand
you
and-
hear.
Yeah. So you're sitting in a stand and you hear a deer cough and you're like, daggone, you look over and there's a deer bedded that you didn't even know was there.
Yeah, it was 30 yards from you.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
No, I mean,
Stands
there's.
up, starts taking a dump.
Yep, that sounds about right. Yeah, I don't know, man. Well, I guess we didn't really look too much in Illinois, but like I know in Ohio, like we had a bumper red oak acorn year. Like
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
Red
fig-
Oaks hit hard this year.
I'm gonna forget if I don't ask this. So let me throw this out there. But in terms of like this, the range and the movement stuff that we're seeing, did you happen to like we saw some of the bucks that we found were there? We're like, okay, whether we saw them with our own eyes or ended up getting a picture of them, we were able to pinpoint them to like 10-acre sections. I'm talking like we wouldn't get pictures of them anywhere else on the farm. It was just like, oh, they're. And like on our farm, it was just 2 different bucks, you know, and different guys. This is in Illinois, like it, you know, in the area we're talking about. They just were not coming out of these like little micro movement patterns. Did you see that?
Not necessarily. Actually, what I saw was I was surprised, especially in Illinois, how far my deer were walking.
Wow.
And it kind of threw me for a loop, and that made it tougher for me. Because I'm like, why are they walking this far? Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's no need, you know, so I don't know what was causing that. You know, like I was getting deer on different cameras that, you know, where a deer would literally cover a mile within, you know, an hour and a half.
Jeez. That's crazy.
On cameras, like bang, bang, you know, and you're like, what are you doing? Or like cross one huge ravine and creek bottom up to another one, up to another field,
Yeah.
and go a couple 100 yards and hit another scrape or looking for does there. And I'm like, there's plenty of does. Like, why are they walking this much? You know? So I don't know if there was just the does were getting bred faster this year. And I don't know, but like, I thought that was strange.
Yeah. Well, it's not to say we didn't see that too, because certainly I actually passed on a 4-year-old 8-point that I know for a fact got shot at twice by our neighbor.
Cover ground.
Which is probably you know, what do you think, half mile, 3/4 mile
Probably
to the
3/4
north?
of a mile.
You know, and then he just beelined straight to my stand. He had to walk 5 yards under me, you know, and he's continued to do it, but I guess, I don't know.
What I think you'll find too, and I've noticed this, is that you get bucks that will hang in an area for a few days. That's why I think sometimes it's crucial, because like you could sit there and think, oh, he's back or he's in this spot right now. Sometimes you can't waste no time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to get aggressive and move on them, because I think sometimes these deer, like, you know, they'll breed them does or they'll hang with those does for a few days right there. And then they're moving again to another spot. Like they feel like they've done their duty there. So they move a little bit to another spot. And it could only be a half mile, 1/4 mile to another different food plot, bedding area or whatever. But I've noticed that a few times, how some bucks will do that. And like if he shows up in a spot harassing some does and you get him a couple times through the night or whatever, like you better be in that area the next few days because he's going to be there, you know.
For sure.
And then, you know, he might not show up there again for 3-4 days, 5 days, you know, but then you'll pick him up on the next farm over or something. You know, it's just hard to say, you know, or he gets killed, you know, by somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that a lot of those doe or those buck micro movements that we saw were during peak breeding. Like they were just sitting in doe bedding areas, just off one and onto the next, off one and onto the next.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why, like you, I personally, everybody's like, well, what's your favorite time of the year? You know, personally, October and late season, October and December are more my favorite times than any because they're just so unpredictable in that rut time. Like the rut time can literally make you feel like you suck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it can be great. It can be magical and you can have some great hunts and see a lot of deer and some cool things. But man, sometimes to get on the deer you are looking for can be very tough.
Yeah.
It's almost like I feel like we gained a lot of perspective on the lockdown period this year. At least I did. I encountered enough of them. I guess just one or two. I saw two on two different occasions. I saw mature bucks. Sorry, you got to do your thing, Ben?
No, I'm just stretching.
Oh, sorry. On two different occasions, I saw mature bucks, like shooters of ours in Illinois, locked down with those. Meaning, the one I only saw because a forkhorn walked in and he stood up to basically let him know he was there and to, you know, scram.
Yep.
I saw him for like 5 seconds, and I happened to be in a stand across a big giant CRP field. I was like, holy crap, there he is. And then all of a sudden he was gone, you know, bedded back down in the foxtail. And I'm like, okay, well, and so I learned that he was there, and it also gave me like the feeling like, okay, well, I don't suck as bad as he's just there. He's just not going to leave. He's just not leaving there. He's there with that doe. Yep. And I made a move. I did my thing over there, and I encountered, that's when I passed that other 4-year-old. And then on another occasion, I saw a different buck doing a very similar thing. And on 2 other occasions, so I guess there was 4 total. I didn't see them, but I heard these deer. I would hear them snort wheeze, and I knew they were doing the same thing that buck that I saw did. He just, you know, a small buck went in on him, and they just ran him out of there or whatever, and they're like, that was it. So every time that happened, I was like, well, okay. I mean, I guess it makes sense that they're just locked down in there with a doe. They're not going to come out. So what am I doing here, I guess? But waiting for him to be done with her. But and it did happen, Ben. That one that I saw stand up 2 days later, he got up and did a long walk, did the whole trot line, walked past all the stands, and I had him at 35 yards, and the doe just happened to catch my scent trail that I walked in on, and she boogered, or he'd have been dead, you know. So and that's what we're waiting for, is that break for them to get up and do the thing.
Yeah, well, that's like, so for instance, in Kansas, you know, I was on a really big deer. We'd had pictures of a really good deer, and I happened to be there at the time that must have been like after the first lockdown, and literally the full day I had to go, the first day I was there of a full day to hunt, I hunted in the morning in a spot where I thought I could see him, didn't see him. So then I went back to the truck, and the wind was switching, so I knew I had to move to a different spot, but I was going to have to hang and hunt. So when I got back to the truck, I was like, you know what, I'm going to stick a camera right here on this fence post, because these deer cross from one little finger going into this big draw into a pasture area into this other creek on them. And I could see the tracks crossing this little 70-yard wide swath where the tractors and stuff come in from the road to go into the big ag. And, you know, Kansas is different than like Ohio, where that, like, you know, these little cedar draws are like cover, not much cover is covered to them.
Yeah.
And so I put this camera on a fence post and a stealth cam, and I got my stand and all this. And I'm like, well, I got to go hike all this way up here along this edge of this cut cornfield and get into this other spot along this creek. But it's going to be a hard spot to do, but I'm probably going to jump some deer, but I feel like this is where I need to be. So long story short, I put that camera up, I get all the way where I need to be, hike in there. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm going to shoot this deer from the ground. And the deer, they never just, I lost them. I never saw them again. Well, they must have turned in the corn and went back. So then I'm like, well, maybe I need, and that's all it took for me to make a stupid decision. So then I'm like, oh, maybe I need to go up there. Maybe that's where, because, the neighbor said he had seen that same deer right there a time or two. And I'm like, well, maybe that's his routine. He runs the does out right there and gets him away from the main cover, and he's hanging out there. So I'm like, well, maybe I better go up there. So I grab my crap and I move literally 80 yards to that spot. Didn't like it, but I'm like, well, I can shoot to the edge of the cornfield. So I started to hang the stand, and literally my bow's hanging at the bottom of the tree. And I'd seen that deer again that was chasing the doe, and it wasn't the big deer, but it was a good deer. And I saw him again over there, and I was like, he started to come right to me again. And then he turned her again, got her back in the bottom. So I'm sitting there like, this is pretty cool, though. It's a fun hunt. And I started to reach down to grab my bow to pull it up the bow rope. And I look up the creek bottom where I just was standing, where I really wanted to hang. And here comes the giant. Walked 30 yards at 1:45 in the afternoon from the tree I was going to get in.
Oh, no.
Comes right to me, then goes down into the creek at 40 yards. It's too thick. I had no... I posted it here just the other day on a story, like a legit 180 or whatever. And he's down in the creek and he's just moving around, and he just literally does that, piss off walk. Like, I grunted at him a time or two, just seeing if I couldn't turn him. He didn't care.
He didn't care.
He didn't care at all. He did his thing, doing the stiff legged, just through there, stopped, listened to me, wagged his tail, just like, whatever. Moved on, and I had no shot. Closest I had him was 45 yards, but there was just no way to get into him. But hammer, legit 180.
Bummer.
And I never saw him again. Like, that was the day he was on his feet.
Yeah.
At that point on, he had been, I think he got locked up. Never saw him again. In fact, didn't even get any more pictures of him till like nighttime 3 days later. Or 2 days later.
Yeah.
So
we see that too. We didn't see, in fact, the day that I saw that buck that I mentioned got to 35 yards or whatever, that was the first daylight picture we got of him.
Yep.
And first daylight sighting other than I had seen him stand up for 5 seconds with that doe the day before. And it wasn't until...
That was November 22nd or something.
The 22nd of November.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, and I forgot to say this, so... Then I sitting there, deflated, whatever, thought, well, maybe he could circle back around. Never saw him again. But that night I checked my cameras, and that camera I had stuck up on that fence post south of me, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile. That sucker walked right by there at 11:30.
Jeez.
I hung the camera at 11. He walked through there at 11:30.
Wow.
I could have shot him from my pickup truck.
Wow.
He walked right by my
He probably
truck.
thought you were coming in with a corn pile.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. He just walked right through there like it was nothing.
Wow.
And just a giant, man. Just a hammer.
Those
Just
damn
a
Kansas
freaking-
deer.
Just a stud.
We're excited.
But they're so, it is what it is. They're just cool.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like, observing those deer, we talk about all the time. It's like, I wish people would, and it's hard to ask for the patience, but I wish people could just be able to observe a mature buck doing mature buck things in daylight in person, because it will change you.
Yeah. Once you see a legit 175 to even bigger, you don't want to hunt anything else.
Yeah, it changes you, man.
Now granted, we all have fun and still do. Like, I haven't shot a booner this year, but I am saying, like, that is literally your goal.
Yeah.
Like, you see one of those suckers, you kill a couple of them, and nothing compares to that. Like, it's just, it's like Honey Boo Boo and Julia Roberts different.
It's a big difference.
So, yeah, it's just totally different.
Huh.
And they just consume you then. Like, once you see one that challenges, yeah, they're just special, man. Like, they are so special.
Well, I think that's the consumption where and it's hard because you're trying to have conversations with people who probably, they want to kill a big buck, but they don't realize what that is. They don't realize, what they need to do it. And so when you're having the conversation of like, listen, like, if we all get on the same page here, like, we all have a better opportunity to experience this, it's a hard disconnect there, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is how I feel anyways, Ben. And it's not like I've killed a whole pile of booners. You know, I mean, you I'm sure have this perspective way more than I do, but it's like once you see what a deer can do, like once they reach an age of maturity or whatever, it's like any deer that gets killed younger than that, and it's not that you're not happy for the hunter or whatever, but it's just, it is also a shame just to know what that deer could have been, because you've experienced it. You're like, hey, here's what they can do. I'm holding this, you know, that Iowa deer this year. I was like, holy cow, this is what they can do. And so I don't know how it doesn't have that effect on you, to where any deer that you see now that gets killed before its prime, you know, you're just like, you can't help but think like, boy, what a shame. Like, it could have been this. It could have been.
I mean, and I was guilty of that last year in Illinois. I mean, I shot a deer. It's the biggest screw up I've ever made in my life, I feel, in the deer woods. I mean, and you know, the trail cams, everything had me fooled about this deer. And I was just convinced this deer was a shooter, you know. And then when I finally encountered him, all I was looking at was, I saw the rack. I knew it was that deer. And we commenced to, you know, then trying to coax the deer into distance, and, you know, couldn't see his body real good. I was just focusing on getting this deer in front of me. And he finally come out of these cedars and stuff in this bottom. And I mean, I had plenty of time to look at his body and make a decision, but I was so focused at that point. I was locked in. I was zeroed in. I'm killing this deer. Mm-hmm. And I just wasn't in his rack. Everything just looked so good. And I'm like, you know, I'm getting ready to shoot a booner. And he comes walking, you know, I stop him 21, 22 yards, pinwheel him. He goes 40 and falls over. And I'm jacked out of my mind, you know. And we get over there. And I literally got up to this deer all excited, and I walk up on him, and I literally turned at my camera guy and I said, shut that freaking camera off.
Oh.
I said, I just made the biggest mistake of my entire freaking life, you know, on a deer. And oh my gosh, dude. I mean, I'm telling you, like, I just wanted to puke. Like, literally. What? I can't even tell you. To this day, it bothers me. I mean, this deer, we called him the Insider. And he had inside rows, outside rows, and he just looked so much bigger in person than what he, you know, on the hoof and in trail cam pictures than what he really was. I'm not kidding you, I literally shot the future world record typical at the age of 2.5 or 3.
What do you think he was in hindsight, age-wise? You said 2 or 3, and what did he score?
3.5. I found his shed that spring, but it didn't even register with me when I was getting the pictures that it was this deer.
Right.
Because the shed was so small and it just had little nubs. Yeah. And now, granted, it was pushed down in the dirt, and somebody just made this comment to me the other day, but I figured out this shed was him. And I thought, if that's his shed, this deer is literally 2.5 years old at most. Well, then a guy said to me the other day, and I don't know why I didn't think this. He goes, well, how do you know that wasn't his year before shed?
Yeah, the year before. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, because the deer literally, I don't know how a deer at 2.5 could be like that, you know, because he's still 160, you know. But,
yeah.
I mean,
well, I have one of those.
But I mean, he is insane. Like, what he did, the amount of time length and everything that he put on, he just blew my mind. Like, and I felt so dang bad because, like, whether it was me that would have killed him or somebody else, like, I took a deer out of the gene pool that is like,
sure,
I don't know, 1 out of 500,000.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man, it's tough. I mean, I wish I had it here. Like, I've got that deer in Kentucky, which was one that I was looking for this year, and this is in the mountains of Kentucky. I mean, he was a mainframe 11 last year that would have scored high 40s as what I think was a giant 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just,
they happen.
yeah, I mean, Well, Winky was the one I was with. He hunted a 3-year-old that was 215 inches. It was he was like, it was a 3-year-old deer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like,
I mean, I've heard that numerous times. It's just, I don't know. And so, like, you know, I felt bad then that I was upset about, and I wasn't upset about the hunt. I was upset at myself.
Sure.
Like, the hunt was great.
Well, and that's what sucks, dude, because it's like, here's the deer, you killed him. Like, the hunt was great. It's just, in hindsight, it wasn't what you thought.
Yeah, I just felt like I screwed, you know, my land partners over, and, you know, like, I'm just like, I did the exact same thing that I tell everybody not to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That happens.
So
it does.
I had to eat some of my own porridge, but, you know, but it's amazing what some deer really do. And when they have that genetic makeup and you take them out at late October before they really got to breed anything, you're like, ugh, like, is that gene going to disappear? Or, you know, you hope it's from the mom. But have you ever seen the Bryant buck?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
The Jerry Bryant buck from Illinois?
I don't think so.
You should Google that. Freaking monster. 290s. No, actually, I think it was a 300-inch deer.
Jeez.
Jerry Bryant is a music performer?
I think it's Jerry Bryant, but if you
Holy
just Google the Bryant buck.
Yeah,
Okay.
I see it. Wow. Wow.
Yep.
See how he has those inside tines?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
This deer was identical to that, or he would have been, but probably wouldn't have had that kind of mass. He would have been taller tines eventually.
Damn.
And a little more, insane. He had that exact makeup. That's all I could think about after I was sitting there looking at it.
Well, it's hard, dude. I mean, that's the stuff that, you know, and even with like all the pictures and everything, like, you know, it's not like it just popped up on you in the stand. Like, you know, a dude who's seen a lot of big deer in his lifetime has studied this deer, and like, if they're deer fool people, they just
put the hunt breakdown up on Deer Society.
Okay,
you'll have to watch it, because when you see the trail cam videos, I think you'll agree with me. Like, dang, that deer body looked a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Then I get up to him and I literally could grab the deer by his freaking legs and throw him in the back of the Ranger by myself almost.
Oh,
wow.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm like, is there 2 deer in here?
Did you happen to pull his incisors and send him off or anything?
No, but he's still in the freezer in Illinois.
It'd be interesting. You know, I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but just as because, dude, I have seen, not many, but I have seen deer that are 4 or 5 that just
don't grow.
Yeah, they don't grow. They're like dwarfs. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, they're just small bodied.
Yeah, I'll be honest. My first 200 was an old deer, but his body was not big.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like some deer just put more in. They take so much. They rob their skeleton because their genetic makeup is to push into their antlers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree.
Now, I don't think that's the case with this deer because he was spindly.
Yeah.
You know, this deer was a legit young deer. I mean, you know, but it was still a fun hunt, but it was a really hard lesson, you know. I was like, oh.
Well, and I mean, but in hindsight, like, you're using the intel and the data that you had. Like, what else would you have done? You know, I mean.
Well, that's typically what I did. I relied on, you know, cell cam footage or trail cam pictures to tell me, like, okay. And so that way it takes a lot of the guessing game out. When you see that split tine or this or that, you know that's the deer you're after, and it's game on, and you just hone in on killing.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that you would have had would have been history. And especially when we're talking about 1 to 2 or even 2 to 3 in some cases, that's hard to connect.
Yeah. And I didn't have history because that was the first year we ever hunted that spot.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
I ever sat it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd never hunted it, killed the deer on the first sit.
Yeah.
You know, I went in a week and a half earlier, hung the stand, and killed the deer the first sit in.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, you know, and honestly, that played a lot probably to your mindset of no history with that deer. You're looking at him saying, yeah, he probably is older.
Yeah. But it's an interesting hunt to watch. But
that'd be cool.
know.
Yeah. We'll have to watch that one for sure.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Sever.
Well, one of the biggest things that we always talk about is what our arrow setups are. And this year we're shooting the Sever broadheads. I think we're both shooting the new 2-inch titanium broadhead. And so, we're huge proponents of expandables. And I know we've had this argument back and forth with people, but
we're right and you're wrong, and you just need to accept it.
We just want to have a giant wound that pumps out blood. That's the bottom line.
We build our arrow setups and shoot bows, to maximize penetration, and we shoot broadheads that are gonna give us the best blood trails, the most hemorrhage possible. And so part of those setups is we're also shooting the Easton arrows here coming up pretty soon. So we've shot the Victory in the past, and there's all kind of great arrow shafts on the market, but we're looking for a whole system from broadhead to arrow components to the arrow shaft itself. And the more we look at some of these Easton shafts and the components that go with them, that setup's going to be really deadly for us.
Yeah, I'm actually using the Easton traditional axis right now in my traditional setups for both my recurve and my longbow. I've got a 100-grain brass insert on those, and then obviously I'm using a fixed blade broadhead on those specific shafts.
Right on.
So, but yeah, our goal is always to be shooting the best broadhead that we think is going to be the most lethal for our setups. We've done plenty of research. We believe in the Sever broadheads, and we hope you would check them out at Sever Broadheads as well.
It's tough, man. I find myself constantly, in the same way I'll send them to Jeremy, we'll send them back to each other. I'm like, dude, is this deer? It's 2 and 3 is where I'm getting caught up.
Sure.
3 and 4, usually I'm feeling more confident. And 4 to 5, I'm like, I can do that. But 2 and 3 is where I'm like, boy.
Well, the buck I killed in Ohio this year, I would have bet money when I was hunting him that he was a 5-year-old because I've watched him since I bought the property, but I pegged him as a 3-year-old the first year I owned it, and he was probably 2. And so I killed him at 4. And
it's hard to judge deer, man. I really think it is, because I have a deer in Ohio on a farm that I own. And you guys may, I know you've seen these videos, but, or heard me talk about it before, but it's a deer we called the Old 8.
Mm-hmm.
And this deer was a giant 8 at one time. His biggest year, he was 163, 164 as an 8.
That's a massive 8.
Huge 8, monster. But I actually had a bigger deer to hunt the year that he was at his prime, and I killed that deer, so I didn't kill him, and you can only get one deer in Ohio. So he got a pass that year. That deer is 9.5 years old, best I can tell. 8.5 to 9.5 years old right now, living on my farm. I started getting pictures of him with a good rack in 2018.
Jeez.
19, he was a giant. In 20, he was the biggest. Well, here it's 24, and he's still there. And you would see this deer's body, and you go, man, is he 4?
Yeah.
Every year he looks 4.
Yeah.
What is he antler wise now?
He's gone downhill quite a bit. I would say he's probably 40.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've always been interested. It seems
but he looks like an old man. Now you can tell
Yeah.
he's an old deer.
Yeah.
But his body's still at those peak years, he's looked sleek and 4 his whole life.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ben, in Ohio compared to I would say in some of the Midwestern states, Kansas specifically, but I would say Ohio and I guess I would lump Illinois in there too, is it seems like some of those deer can peak at even Lakoski would tell you, or Mark Drury might tell you, it's 8 or, sometimes 9 or granted, we don't get that many of them to that age, but in Ohio, it just seems like I rarely have seen one get bigger than they are at 5. It seems like after 5 years old, they all start to just kind of go downhill.
Yeah, I agree. Now I'm not saying every deer's that way, but in the hill country where I hunt, it seems to me that those deer peak around 5, maybe 6, but I've passed many deer that I thought were 4.5 or 5.5 and thought I'm going to give them one more year, and the next year they're nothing.
Yeah.
They didn't grow at all, or they actually went downhill, and you're like, what in the heck?
Yeah.
I think it's a nutrition thing.
Yeah, to where Kansas, that deer I was just talking about that I was trying to kill that I had an encounter with, that deer last year was just a big clean 8, probably 150-inch 8-pointer. And this year he's a 180-inch deer. And honestly, looking at him last year, I'm like, There's no way that deer's going to be anything different at 5 years old. He's already 5. There's no way he's going to be anything different than that big 8-point.
Wow.
Well, boy, was I wrong. He put on huge mass, threw an extra inside point, another point, a big dagger out the front. The other side stayed a clean 4. Just a scary looking deer.
Dang.
Huge, tall off his head. I'm like, gosh,
You
don't do that.
You do have to wonder. I mean, probably not. It's probably just what those deer versus what our deer do. But you got to wonder if there's like a life event that happens. Brackett was telling me about, and they had some name for it. Maybe it'll come to me, but like I think it was a 4-year-old or a 3 or 4-year-old that this guy. It was like I don't know. I'm gonna mess the numbers up here, but let's say it was a 150-inch, 10-point or something, and they shot the thing directly in the shoulder, like directly in the scapula or whatever. Didn't get it. The deer pushed the broadhead out or whatever, and molded over it. Yep. And the next year, it blew up into like a 215 something. And they attributed it to some sort of like a mega calcium dump. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? And they're speculating to look back on it, but they're thinking because they shot this thing, it had some sort of effect on its bone structure, its calcium deposit to heal that thing, that it threw a giant set of antlers the next year. And they killed it. Same guy killed it.
Damn.
Well, hey, Jeremy, you know Austin Musselman, right?
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about? So Austin, back, I think it was 2016, he killed that 269 in Kentucky.
Yep, I remember that.
The year before, that deer was not, he was big, but he wasn't anywhere close to that.
Right.
Well, that year, when he shed his antlers the year before he became the 269, he shed hard in that he pulled out part of his bird,
pedicle
skull or whatever.
Stuff,
that pedicle, and that next year, that side just went boom.
Yeah, exploded.
Exploded.
Yep, that makes sense. That's what you usually see is like if there's a pedicle injury, like that could just throw gnarly, just crazy stuff off of that.
Well,
so does that mean we should stand behind trees with a baseball bat in February,
just beat them.
Deer that are still holding when they come walking around, just
whack them off.
Try to knock their horns out.
Well, we'll have one to test here next year. So Brian shot that flyer buck. He's already got just a kicker, 4-inch kicker off one of his 2s. Other than that, he's a clean 8-point. Well, I guess off the front here, he's got a little thing too, and he shot that deer directly in the shoulder, and he looks fine. He's running does.
I mean,
around
I've
and stuff.
found them
Curious
before.
What he'll do next year.
You find those sheds that aren't just super clean, right? They've got a piece of pedicle on them, but the ones that you see larger chunks, the problem is that's a massive pathway for bacteria to do brain abscesses. As soon as that cracks open like that, you now have just a giant area for infection that leaches into the brain, and that's bad news for those
if they
guys.
live, you go through a little trauma to get that character.
You talk about the 8-year-olds and stuff. I mean, the thing that we usually look at for those deer are there's a point in those deer's life where from the age structure in the population, they're not the dominant buck doing the breeding. And I think that whether they get sick or whether they lay off the breeding, I think that they store so much energy at that 6, 7, 8-year-old time period that the next year they throw their biggest rack. Yeah. We saw it with this deer. I mean, this deer was a 155-inch 10-point his entire life, 6, 7, 8, 9, and at 10 years old he becomes a 180 just mega free.
So that theory works for the Midwest, but not. We're not seeing that in Ohio.
Well, it's because the age structure is not there.
We just don't have.
Off. There's not a whole bunch of 4 and 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds that are pushing these 7 and 8-year-olds out of the breeding pocket. If you've got a 7 or 8-year-old in Ohio, he's still probably the king of the mountain.
I would say it's more just we don't have 7 and 8-year-olds for the most part.
Yeah, that's true too.
I got a question for you. I wanted to get your guys' opinion, or if you know this answer. Do you think the genetic of lopsided rack type deer, say a deer's got a junky side but a really good side, do you think that is a gene that can just keep being passed down, or do you always think that comes from an injury?
No, I think that could be a gene. Yep, I think that could be a gene. In fact,
can we diagnose it? Because I've got a pile of them.
I mean,
do I.
It's just a gene.
In Illinois, I've got a pile of those kind of deer, and it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the ones that people tend to go to are the cow horn spike on one side and the normal on the other one. I think most of those are injuries, pedicle injuries.
Really?
Oh yeah, that's not a genetic gene.
Most of them are injuries.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. pedicles from fighting and stuff.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not that's not a gene thing, but like an actual like lopsided, like if
that's what you're talking about, right? Like a cow horn on one side.
No, I'm talking about like cow horn one side.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think that's mostly
maybe
injury.
It grows up and it's got 2 or 3 spikes on this side, but this side is really nice and beautiful.
Yep. No, I think that's injury based.
Well, Ben, do you have enough? You get enough history with those deer? Are you seeing them year to year?
I've got a couple of them that I know ever since we bought that farm in Illinois, we have had deer like that, and I'm not talking just one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like a couple every year, and the same deer were like that. Like Dwayne shot one last year. He killed it to get it out of the herd for us. But this year I've got another deer there. It's got an unbelievable, great typical side, and he's just got 3 on this side, like a main beam, a G2, and a brow.
Yep.
And he would be a 180-inch deer if he matched. Yep. But then I've got one that's got just 3 big spikes and a normal side. Then another one that's got a normal 4-point side and a big just fork. And it's like, what the heck is going on? Then I got one that's got a great side and a little tiny spike.
Well, yeah, that's why you get 2 tags in Illinois. You just got to shoot 2 of them and stick them together.
Well, I mean,
I just don't understand. Like, I'm just sitting there going, is that a gene that just keeps getting passed around this farm? Because, like, I'm not knowing that many people.
But that'll answer your question. You are seeing the deer. You can confirm from one year to the next. You're seeing it still have that cow horn?
I have 2 of them for sure that I knew was one deer to the next. Yeah, absolutely. One deer to the next.
So that's clearly genetic. In that specific case, no.
No, I mean, pedicle injuries don't recover.
Oh.
Yeah. That pedicle does not grow back. When that pedicle base is broken off, there is no repairing that thing.
Yeah. What do you mean?
So you're saying from an injury standpoint, like, because Dan, my partner Dan shot, so the 170 I shot last year in Ohio, we called Superstar.
Yep.
Dan, the year before, which wasn't a result of what Dan did, but this deer the year before, so 2 years back, the deer was a beautiful 10-point. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden he come back in the year of 22 and he was messed up. Mm-hmm. But we were like, what happened to him? Like, nobody shot him that we knew of.
Yep.
So we didn't know if he got hit by a car or what, but he come back and he had just big daggers on one side and a beautiful typical on the other side. And we're like, gosh darn. So Dan thought, well, we'll go ahead and try to shoot him. So Dan put an arrow in the deer, but it was very, very low. Like, it didn't even do anything to the deer.
Yeah.
Like, literally just that bottom belly skin, cut a hole in him.
Yep.
And he was chasing does that night on camera, and he survived the whole year. I killed him the following year, and he was absolutely perfect again and blew up.
Yeah. So that was probably just that probably was some sort of injury that was not related to the pedicle.
Okay.
On the body of the deer.
I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, on the body of the deer.
But I had never seen a deer bounce back from that.
Well, I mean, we've got one. I mean, look at Crazy Horse. He was completely messed up on that side, and now
it wasn't a cow horn, though. Like that, if I had to guess, I'd say that's an injury.
Yeah, probably to his body, not to his pedicle, because he cleaned up the next year.
Either way,
like they can't clean up the next year if it's a pedicle injury.
Why not?
Because that pedicle base doesn't repair itself. It doesn't heal. It's a bone structure.
Yeah,
makes sense.
That doesn't mean it's going to be a cow horn, though. It could be anything. It could blow into,
Yeah, it could just be 4 nasty things.
I think those cow horns are genetic. Personally, I
don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
Don't you see that a lot in the Southeast?
You see a ton of it in the South, but it's because they have older age structures. There's more fighting going on,
and they're pedicle injuries.
No, I think that they're just body injuries, getting gored, getting hit. Yeah, I think they're just body injuries. I do think some of them are pedicle injuries. If it's a year after year after year thing, like the deer doesn't recover, it's a pedicle injury.
Well, I don't know how to explain it. I've got a uncomfortably high percentage of those things. Like,
it's probably pedicle injuries.
Yeah, me too.
If they're not cleaning up, yeah.
I've got 4 at least.
Well, think about the number 3 and 4 and 5-year-old bucks you have just fighting all the time.
Yeah, they do beat each other up pretty bad in Illinois and Missouri and Kansas.
Yep.
Dude, I don't know. In Ohio, I don't have a single deer that doesn't have a tine busted off. Every single deer I had in Ohio that was 4 years old or older before November 1st had broken off at least one tine.
All loud.
I had 3 8 points, two 4-year-olds and a 5-year-old.
All brows broke.
All of them by mid-October had one broken brow tine. There wasn't a deer with 2 brow tines running around on that farm.
I had this buck in Ohio, probably a 4-year-old, who had this like 12 or 13 inch just gnarly third beam coming out. Made it through all of October and November. 3 days ago, broke it off. I'm like, what the hell are you doing, dude? It's December.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They are. That 9 just broke that 3 off or whatever a week ago.
Just cracking them up. But yeah, I mean, that stuff, if it can't change, like if it's a year after year after year on the same deer, I would put that to a pedicle injury. It can't heal those things. It won't ever fix it.
How could we test that?
I mean,
I think it's genetic.
Well, I mean,
the cow horn thing specifically.
If you're genetic, you're screwed because those genes will eventually take over, and that's all you have.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, well, maybe in a high grading sense.
In a high grading sense, because you're not shooting them.
I'll shoot them.
You're not though.
I almost think.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
I almost think there's a world, Ben, where I would almost advocate for two tags in Ohio, but like that'd be pretty far down the road, and you'd have to like have some pretty stringent circumstances for me to advocate for that. But that would be the case.
Yeah.
Or listen, here's what you do: you plant Christmas trees and sell a few of them every year, and then they'll come and give you buck tags, and you can shoot them.
Yeah.
One thing I do wish they do in Ohio is implement earn a buck.
Yeah.
Shoot a doe before you
well,
shoot a buck.
so that's I've had a lot of conversations about that.
Like in my area,
yeah.
I think they need that.
Well, or DMAP. They just need whatever they need. Give you DMAP, and so you can shoot 10 does if you want to shoot 10 does. Like that's the problem right now is you can't do it. It's funny that like Pennsylvania, we still shoot more does than we shoot bucks in the state. But like Michigan was like a 4-1 in gun season. I was mind blown. Couldn't believe it. 4 bucks to every 1 doe.
Wow.
That they were killing up there. I don't think Ohio's that bad, but I do think it's skewed pretty good.
Yeah.
It's crazy though. When you start to look at those harvest numbers, because that's a big. I mean, that you start to talk about those big bucks, like between social pressure and just like especially now when food and space and bedding is a limited resource, like, and they don't want to be where there's 55 does out in the field eating. Like they just don't want to deal with that stuff.
It's hard to know from year to year. Like we're getting ready to probably shoot some does, but go ahead, man.
No, I was just saying it is hard to know. Like, and I'd be interesting to know if you guys find out some scientific research on that, cow horn deal on the, just messed up sides.
They've done some.
All body or all pedicle.
Yeah, they've done some.
Can you tell from the shed antler if you found if you found that cow horn antler? Mm-hmm. Can you look at the base of it and say,
probably,
well, hey, there's an injury here?
It'll probably not look uniform and normal like this does. Whether a lot of times they don't have the burr complete. Like even with this one, see how that's kind of like taken out? Like that's probably because that pedicle, you see how it's kind of like squared off there? On this side, it shouldn't be there.
Why though would a pedicle injury lead to a complete deformity of the antler?
It's the growth plate.
Yeah,
it is the source of all antler growth. I mean, the moment that's damaged, everything changes, and it could be as much as we have one here somewhere that's got like a little piece of the pedicle on it. I mean, the moment that changes, the entire antler configuration is shit.
Well, I've seen a lot of those. I mean, I pick up a lot of horns that have like extra, and then they are normal the next year. And in some cases, right.
Sometimes, yeah. If you start paying attention to it, I bet they're not as normal as you think.
I'll have to check that out this year, see if I can find some of those.
Yep. But you would see that that pedicle wouldn't look as clean and as smooth like this one is, obviously. Like that's a perfect attachment.
That's a real nice pedicle.
That's a real nice pedicle right there. Yep. And so the burr looks normal, like everything looks normal about that. But you won't see that on those ones that have the pedicle injury side of it.
Gotcha.
They won't be normal.
Have to see if I can find one of these this year. I'll look hard for one because I want to know.
Yeah. Versus like, I mean, pick up. I'm sure they're not easy to find, but we've all found a spike, like a normal spike. It looks like a normal pedicle.
So where are you hunting in? Well, not where. I'm trying to
give me a pin.
How can I sensitively ask the question? Like, what are you doing in Missouri?
Like, what am I?
I know.
What am I hunting, or like what's my tactic?
All the above.
Yeah, all the above.
Yeah.
What are you doing out there?
Well, I mean, I um, got a place that's got some alfalfa on it. It's got a lot of big timber and a creek bottom and stuff, but there's a ton of deer hitting that alfalfa right now at this cold weather. I haven't seen a lot of big bucks on camera, but I was already in Illinois, so I'm like, I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
Give it a few, and I don't want to be in Ohio during gun season. So
Yep.
I can't walk timber. That's like a death sentence trying to walk timber for my job during gun season. So I'm not doing that. So I'm like, well, I'll just go ahead and go to Missouri for a few days and just enjoy it, just hang out and hunt. So that's what I am doing. I'm going to hunt probably a small clover plot that's really tight to cedar bedding tonight because they're really on green right now.
Interesting.
Green and grain. But they'll stage in the green and head to the grain on neighbors' farms or whatever. This farm I can hunt has 0 grain, but them deer love alfalfa and clover right now, and they like the security cover that this farm offers. So I feel like they'll move off this, off the green to the neighboring grain eventually. But I'm only running, I think there's like 6 cams on 250 acres here.
Yeah.
So there could be anything show up.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Well, I mean, gun season just ended not too long ago, so I'm sure there was some pressure around and stuff.
Yeah, and so we'll see, but it's fun. It's somewhere different to go, and it's nice and sunny here. It's really cold, but it's nice and sunny.
Nice.
Yeah.
High pressure, and
they're probably laying in those cedars in that thermal cover and stuff.
Yeah, and they're out during the daytime in the sun feeding in the open. Like they like to get warmed up.
Yeah.
Like early mornings, you might as well forget it. But I'm getting ready to go out here, and I'll probably, once we're done, I'll sit the rest of the day.
Cool.
Yep.
Do you have some bucks or pictures of anyways that you would shoot there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't right at the moment have one on my radar that I'd be like, yes, I'd shoot that deer. I have a lot of nice young deer on camera that I don't want to shoot, but I've had some pictures of one is a big old cow horn deer. Real nice, good side, but a huge spike on the other. I'm talking like a 12-inch spike.
Yeah.
This deer could just murder anything that he tried to fight.
Just a harpoon.
Yeah, and he's a giant deer. Like I would thump that sucker in a heartbeat if I see him.
There you go.
He'd be a great deer to kill. And I would love, actually, that's who I hope I see, unless it's some big giant deer I don't know. But I haven't had anything on camera that's like, wow, but that's an older deer. He definitely would go. So I'm kind of like on the hunt for that deer is my focus, but something could show up that I don't know, This time of year, you just don't know.
Cool.
Because they don't move big distances right now.
Right. Yeah. Just kind of trying to recover after the rut and get ready for I think this cold snap that hit hard and fast just probably put him into a bit of a shock too, of like, whoa, I better change what I'm doing here.
Yeah. Oh, it put him on the food hard.
Yeah.
Like that's why I got in my truck and went to Illinois for a few days. Cause I'm like, they're going to go to the food now. And I had plenty of food standing, and I'm like, they're going to hit the food. They're going to quit thinking about girls for a little bit, cause they know they got to survive.
Yep.
And it worked, and so I'm hoping maybe tonight will be the same issue here, but guess the weather's pretty nasty. Mel said, well, not horrible where we live in Ohio, but just snow and cold on the ground and windy. And
it is.
Like, my buddies Dave and Dean and them from Tag and Brag up north, their stuff in New York is just unbelievable what those deer are dealing with right now.
Yeah, it's like 3-4 feet plus.
Dude, they sent me pictures of a doe, the other couple deer in their field the other night. I don't know how the deer were getting through it.
Yeah.
Like it was insane.
Yeah, I mean the amount of stress and calories those deer are burning, it won't be good. Like they need a and this early. It's the first week of December.
Yeah, and you can't feed deer there. And I told him, I said, man, that'd be hard for me to not. If I could get away in there, it'd be hard for me not to take a couple round bales of hay in there and dump them out.
Yeah. Well, I know that there are people that do that. I mean, people try to, whether they've got sheep or cattle or whatever, they're just going and dropping piles of big alfalfa bales and stuff out there and hoping that it helps the deer too.
Yeah, I mean, because my goodness, that's what I told him. I said, go to the middle field sale and buy a goat, take it up there and tie it out.
Tie it up and then put a 2,000-pound round bale by it.
Yeah, you got the sacrificial goat.
That's Ben in Illinois too. This is the mineral for my goat.
Yeah, for my goat. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, he sent me those pictures. I honestly could not believe it. I mean, the snow was up to this deer's neck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how are they going to survive? He said they went in to hunt that evening. They went in to hunt. They drove their UTV into a certain spot, walked the rest of the way to the blind. When they got out from hunting a couple, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever, got back to the UTV, they couldn't drive it out. It was snowed in. They had to walk a long ways back to their cabin to get out. And it was crazy. He said they have never they've hunted New York their whole life from kids up till now. And they said they have never seen it snow that much that fast.
I'd imagine they just hunker down.
Yeah, he said they got some hemlock thickets.
Yeah.
Get in those hemlocks and get underneath, which I would see. But man, still, as cold as it's been in that much snow, eventually they got to have some energy.
Yeah, and it's like, you just sit under there until it piles up 5 feet around you. Then how the hell do you get out of there? Like you just jump out and you're still in 5 feet of snow.
Well, they don't.
Well,
I bet they don't.
Didn't DeWine declare a state of emergency in that part of Northeast Ohio?
Up towards Cleveland and Erie and stuff. Yeah,
because snow.
And that's where they're in Southwest New York.
Yeah.
So just through Erie up into there's where they're at.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
It was like collapsing roofs, and I saw like a high school roof in like Ashtabula or whatever collapsed and stuff.
Yeah, we're due for a hard winter.
I mean, we haven't had one. I mean, this is
That's what I'm saying.
This is probably the longest cold snap we've had during like early December hunting season.
Yeah.
I can't remember one.
I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, I remember logging, years ago. We used to always get froze up weather end of November into December, and we'd log real hard before Christmas break, because we'd have the frozen ground, and we don't get that much anymore. It's tough sometimes getting logs out because it gets wet. But this year it's been dry. This summer it's been dry, and this fall it's been cold. So the logs are rolling.
Maybe we'll wrap up with this, Ben, just so people, because we're kind of all transitioning here mindset wise a little bit into the land management aspect. How's the timber market right now?
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's white oak is good. Walnut's still moving, but like red oak, poplar, all that stuff is still fairly soft. But the market is specific to other areas too, because what I've realized, especially since now that, I own some land in Illinois, there's nowhere that timber sells for like it does in our area of Ohio. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
There's so much competition, so many sawmills, to where in Illinois or even in Kentucky and all these other places, those guys, they don't have the competition. They have some, but anyways, what I'm getting at is, so standing timber in Ohio is still bringing good money.
Yeah.
But guys in Illinois and other areas, the white oak stave market I've heard is dried up pretty good. So they're not moving that kind of wood like they were. And those guys pretty much only want to cut white oak and walnut.
Right.
So I don't know what it's like out this way. I haven't talked to any loggers, but standing timber is still bringing good money at home, but the lumber, truthfully, the lumber is not warranting what standing timber brings around our area. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I wondered just with like you said, how dry it was. I assumed a lot of crews were cutting all summer and through into early fall and stuff. So I just didn't know from a surplus side if it was starting to stack up or not.
Yeah. Well, here's what I see in our area. Because there is so much competition. So I'll give you some examples. So Holmes County, Wayne County, and Tuscarawas County right there.
Yep.
I want to say that there's 70 some sawmills.
Wow.
In those areas, between those three counties. To where you come out here to Missouri or Illinois or even Western Ohio or Southern Ohio, there's like in 3 counties, you might have 3 to 5 sawmills.
Yep.
So the timber competition for standing timber to keep those mills fed is insane.
Mm-hmm.
What I noticed this year was guys didn't have timber. Even the weather was there to log, but guys were fighting for standing timber.
Wow.
And some guys couldn't get it. Some guys did. Sometimes you have to pay too much to get it.
Yeah.
It's been a battle. Like, I mean, I've been blessed. I've got a lot of timber bought, but that could change fast, running 3 full-time crews on my end. That can, those guys can eat some wood. So, and trying to still do somewhat management at the same time, like, cut the woods at a decent, but not every landowner wants to. Some want to manage, some don't. Some just want the money. So it's just hard to say,
I couldn't believe this year, man. It was I want to say it was September into October. They chipped about 400 acres next to my Ohio place, like
oh, really?
To the ground. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Like 400 acres of like bare dirt.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. Was that public?
No, it's private.
State land?
It's private.
Oh, really?
Yeah, cottle chipping.
I was gonna say, was it cottle chipping?
Yep.
Did they own the land?
They owned 40 acres of it, and then the rest, it was a lady that sold it to them, sold the timber to them.
Yeah, gotcha.
That's crazy though. I've never seen anything like that ever before.
Yeah, that's a lot of dirt to be clear cutting.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it changed the patterns in that area dramatically. I mean, you just
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to create some serious browsing habitat.
Yep.
Eventually, but yeah, that is going to alter things for some time.
Yeah.
Some clear cuts are really good, but that's a vast area to be clear cutting.
I mean, monster area. Yeah, it was wild. When my dad went down for opening day of gun season, he's like, "What the hell?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "They cut it pretty hard, huh?"
Yeah.
You're like that. You're like that's your stand up there on the knob. See that?
Yeah.
That one tree, the telephone pull up there.
That's you.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's been good, guys.
Yeah, man. We appreciate it, bud. We'll get out there and hopefully find something out there in Missouri and enjoy at least a couple good days of weather and hunting.
Yep, I'll let you know. You guys have a good Christmas and God bless.
All right, brother. Appreciate it as
touch.
always. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Quest Hunt Co.
Man, it seems like as technology and social media and stuff just gets incorporated into our daily lives in the deer season more and more, it's like we're always looking for ways to just dial it back, spend more quality time with deer hunters, and really make deer hunting and deer camps great again.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all been part of that annual buck pull, whether it's at your camp or the local fire department, and we're trying to bring that feeling back with Quest Hunt Co. to be able to compete against other people in your state, but also be part of a national competition.
You can sign up in as many states as you want to enter deer that at the end are going to get scored, and you have an opportunity to win some big prizes. And there's an in-person banquet in February that Jeremy and I are going to be at where those prizes are going to get held out. I think we're going to do some sort of whatever, live podcast or speaking. We'll figure that out. But just looking forward to spending time with people who sign up for the tournament.
Yeah, so you can go to Quest Hunt Co. and sign up. Use the code HUNTR15 at checkout. They'll save you a little bit of money, and then hopefully we'll be able to see you in Missouri in February of 25 at the annual convention.
To make this season a quest.
Oh, Ben Rising. Killing bucks in the Midwest one at a time.
It's giving me a little bit of inspiration to... I guess, man, it's like, it's weird to get over that hump where you're like, I guess I'm done. But you're like, well, but you know, what would drive me back to it is that feeling of like when it's not deer season, you're like, why don't I hunt all season long? Mm-hmm. And that's coming.
Yeah.
So I might as well get some in while we can.
I think the two things would be like, and they're far-fetced, but like a surprise. Like something shows up that I'm awesome. like, oh yeah, like that. I'm going like reinvigorates you,
all over
refreshes,
that.
Yeah. Because the ones that are like on camera and have made it through, I'm just like, kind of just want them to make it through now.
Yeah, we're just heading out at this point. Hey,
yeah,
I see you.
Yeah, I see you. Good job. Nice,
well done.
Well played. Well played. But yeah, if something new comes up, it's like, whoa, okay, like what, and then you just reset on that. So that would be a good one, whether it's, finding something or on one of the farms just pops up on camera. I feel like that's kind of where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just Other than that,
just need a little something to trip your trigger there, something to.
Yeah, because like even Illinois, people have asked us about that. It's like we know there's at least 2, if not 3 shooters on our Illinois farm somewhere.
Well, what I'm perplexed by out there is like I know where the grain is, and you'd think that's where they're going to congregate, and they aren't.
Yeah, not yet.
And
well, that one camera on the cut corn's dead, which they could be.
Yeah, but there's not a ton of food there. I mean, there's a little bit standing that it's like it would be worth go mow it and hunt it and see what shows, but it's not your traditional like, hey, well, they're on a pattern to this. I don't think, anyways.
Yeah, and the other is beans, which I mean, they're
not touching those brassicas either.
No, I started to see some deer filter into my beans in Kentucky in the last 3 days. Like I thought for sure when we got that first cold snaps, I'm like, all right, wait, like nothing. And finally, the last 3 days, my camera, I have a 360, and it's just like on fire in there. They're just mowing the pods here in the last couple of days.
I need a visual probably on mine to confirm, because it's like they probably are, but like in Ohio, most of my stuff's just on corn piles at the edges of those grain fields, and they obviously flock to those. But then I'd imagine they work off into the bigger bean field.
Should. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's kind of where it is. It's like, yeah, we still have in some cases, a month and a half to 2 months of, depending on where you're at, of season, and it's like, either you're still on one that you've been grinding for all year, you've got some through, and now you're making the decision of like, if it's a 5-year-old, like that's what the goal is. Like, do you kill him, or he's made it through? Do you try to get him to 6? Or hopefully something pops up and surprises you and retrips the trigger, and then you're back in the game.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong. Just ask, are you happy with where you're at with the season, and flow with it, and
Yeah, I've kind of got a small bug here to like set some steel on some of these, because I do have a lot of coyotes on camera.
It's fun.
Yeah, and foxes. I've got a pile of gray foxes on camera.
It takes a lot of prep work. I mean,
yeah,
that's the only thing about like, you'd like to by now.
In time to check those lines. If I'm setting them in Kentucky, it's like I only can do it when I'm there.
Trapping's so much fun.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's a blast. Have you ever caught a coyote in a steel trap?
2
of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, it's a blast.
Yeah.
Really will help your deer hunting too. I mean, if you can understand, just
got my ass kicked by a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, digging them up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of like, all right, maybe trapping. Definitely, I've got some does on the radar here.
I think I'm gonna take Corey this week maybe and try to whack a couple on film.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And if GR8 happens to walk past, maybe I'll whack him.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna make some better backstrap sausage here soon.
Okay.
I think that's the plan.
Cool.
Yeah. Make some sausage.
Daddy, do you want some sausage?
Do you want some sausage? What's that from?
Oh, what's his name? Jamie Kennedy or something?
Oh, yeah, Kennedy.
Daddy, do you want some sausage?
That's exactly what it is. Anyways, we appreciate Rising coming on for episode 225 of the HUNTR Podcast. Always good to have him and pick his brain and just have a good kind of transparent discussion on kind of the world and the deer hunting as we all see it. And we appreciate you listening. Good luck this week if you're out, and we'll see you next week.
Later.
Take me